Sometime in the 21st century, mysterious portals abruptly shattered our reality. These cosmic gates dragged humanity into deadly, uncharted labyrinths known as catacombs. Inside, nightmarish beasts called enemies completely ran the show. Leave a catacomb unchecked for too long, and those horrors would violently spill into our dimension. Humanity was utterly crushed, basically defenseless against the slaughter. However, survivors eventually uncovered a massive loophole. By surviving inside these catacombs long enough, gifted individuals could trigger an awakening, unlocking supernatural powers called skills. Mankind weaponized these abilities to violently push back the horde. The legendary awakened who braved and dominated these terrifying catacombs earned the title of Dungeon Divers. Cut to a boring classroom, where a professor hyped up how these players basically became society's ultimate rock stars. One student heavily exhaled. Meet Sota Sasaki, our main character. Both his parents were once elite dungeon divers, but his dad tragically fell in combat. Despite his mother's grim fate, Sota desperately craved to become a player, an epic dungeon diver honoring their legacy. Suddenly, his peaceful daydreaming violently shattered when a nightmare-fueled shadow beast materialized outside the window, bearing razor-sharp fangs ready to feast on his flesh. This terrifying jump scare completely paralyzed Sota, ripping a desperate scream from his lungs. The entire class just awkwardly stared, launching into ruthless, muffled trash talk, clearly proving this wasn't his first unhinged outburst. He pathetically tumbled out of his seat in absolute panic. Honestly, literally nobody else could perceive this demonic anomaly. This terrifying glitch started recently. His reality fractured, exposing horrors invisible to normal humans. They call it spirit sight, the cursed ability to witness phantoms. Back when his dad lived, they desperately attempted to trigger his awakening, but epic failure struck because paralyzing dread shattered his concentration. Our main character brutally suffered through hours of exposure, yet his powers remained completely dormant. He utterly failed to mirror his legendary father, society's absolute strongest flame master. Suddenly, a classmate casually checked on him, pulling Sota off the floor. Our guy absolutely never expected a saving grace from this specific dude. Enter Takuto Saiga, his former childhood bestie turned elite player, a fully awakened dungeon diver flexing serious abilities. Gripping him tight, Takuto menacingly whispered, "After school, our usual spot." That icy threat instantly made Sota sweat bullets. The brainwashed class swooned over Takuto, praising his fake saintly vibe. But Sota's terrified eyes told a wildly different story. Dragging himself to the spot, a brutal right hook instantly welcomed Sota. "You are late, you pathetic, self-proclaimed ghost whisperer." Plot twist. His former friend was actually a straight-up sadistic tyrant. Takuto glared down with disgust at Sota's battered, crumpled body. Yanking Sota's collar, the bully demanded his daily tribute. Handing over his last crumpled bills, Takuto sneered. "Is this garbage it?" Disgusted by the measly stack, Takuto scoffed. Desperate, Sota choked out that every remaining dime was strictly hoarding for his mother's critical life support bills. A ruthless kick landed deep in Sota's gut. Takuto coldly ordered him to stop blowing cash on a comatose corpse cursed by the catacombs. He sadistically dragged his father's legacy, claiming the man went clinically insane and died like absolute garbage. The villainous rant escalated, branding Sota's entire bloodline a pathetic joke. Takuto ruthlessly accused him of faking this whole spirit sight nonsense, just to mask his massive loser status. Hot, frustrated tears spilled. With a venomous smirk, he mocked their very existence. But Sota's defiant glare instantly triggered the tyrant. Our guy finally stood, pure, unadulterated fury igniting his eyes. Barking at Sota to bow down, Takuto labeled him completely worthless garbage. A brutal, one-sided beatdown mercilessly rained down once more. Amidst the blows, a devastating realization hit Sota. Yes, his father mentally fractured after Mom's collapse, obsessively plunging into the deadly catacombs, driven by sheer madness until death violently snatched him away. But in Sota's heart, a massive hidden truth definitely fueled that sacrifice. Bleeding and utterly helpless, Sota stayed grounded. Takuto violently hoisted him up, declaring a twisted plan to aggressively train this loser to replace his deadbeat parents. Suddenly, a swirling green portal materialized from nowhere. Sota's jaw dropped at the sight of a legitimate gate. Flexing his ego, Takuto bragged he discovered it yesterday, marking ground zero for hellish training. A nervous lackey questioned the lethal risks involved, but the arrogant bully ruthlessly told the coward to bounce if he was scared. Takuto possessed insanely toxic confidence regarding this beginner-level portal, mocking its weak aura since they had already conquered brutal purple tears. Visceral panic violently choked Sota. He aggressively clenched his shaking fists. Without warning, Takuto whipped out his bow, aiming a lethal shot. A razor-sharp arrow violently grazed Sota's cheek. "Stop acting like a crybaby, or the next deadly strike targets your comatose mother." Blazing fury nearly shattered Soda's grinding teeth, but zero options forced his bitter submission. The toxic squad marched through the shimmering green void, entering the dungeon. Per usual, only Soda's cursed eyes registered the terrifying, lurking phantoms, sending absolute shockwaves of terror down his spine. Suddenly, a blazing inferno orb materialized, rocketing directly at Soda's fragile skull. Paralyzed by impending doom, his brain completely short-circuited. Our hero squeezed his eyes shut for impact, but Takuto effortlessly punted the blazing sphere, roaring at Soda to quit acting pathetic. He brutally roasted him for dishonoring his legendary flame-wielding father's once great, awe-inspiring reputation. Spitting pure venom, he declared Soda's constant whining nauseating, straight up claiming his pathetic existence held zero purpose. Those words cut incredibly deep. Toxic garbage endlessly spewed from the bully's mouth, viciously painting Soda's father as an absolute scumbag. He ranted that even when his own wife collapsed, Takuto ruthlessly mocked Soda's late father, trashing him as a total loser who wasted his life raiding catacombs. This toxic bully claimed his dad cared more about clout than family, practically daring Soda to perish down here. Just drop dead and join your old man, the jerk sneered. Those venomous words instantly shattered our MC's heart. Tears streamed down his face. Was the whole world laughing at him? Were these lingering spirits actually throwing shade? Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoed. Soda froze, eyes darting around wildly. Did that glowing ember just speak? Focus your senses, it whispered. Jaw hitting the floor, our MC realized this entity was genuinely communicating. Meanwhile, that scumbag Takuto demanded his attention. Suddenly, the bully froze. Crimson sprayed everywhere as a massive claw pierced his back. The goons watched in pure horror. A colossal, nightmarish arachnid hoisted their bleeding boss high into the dark abyss. Panic erupted. Was this the legendary arachnid empress? The ultimate apex predator of this brutal red-tier death trap? This monstrosity drags fresh meat home, injecting parasitic eggs while devouring them alive. Talk about absolute nightmare fuel. The gruesome leftovers go straight to her ravenous babies. Terrified, those cowardly minions bolted, ditching Soda with the glowing orb. Trapped, a terrifying swarm of creepy crawlers boxed him in, eyeing our boy like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Is it game over? He panicked, but his will to survive ignited. The blazing spirit suddenly piped up again. Never back down, the entity roared. Awaken your instincts and feel the energy. In your current state, you are ready. Though completely baffled, Soda trusted the voice. Instantly, a blinding radiance shattered the darkness. A system prompt materialized. Time limit surpassed. Jackpot. A hidden ability had just been officially unlocked within his core. Thanks to the dungeon's sacred blessing, he acquired the legendary tier skill, Phantom Heritage Anomaly. Phantom Souls? What does that mean? He questioned. Suddenly, the glowing orb expanded massively. Soda stood paralyzed. The blazing inferno miraculously morphed into his late father's silhouette. Trembling, he stretched his arm forward. Demonic screeches echoed as beasts lunged. But the moment their fingertips connected, a catastrophic shockwave detonated. The blast instantly vaporized the horde. Pure, unadulterated fiery energy coursed right through Soda's veins. This insane anomaly trait let him hijack abilities from fallen warriors. Now, he wielded absolute control over fire. He inherited his old man's signature move. Mind utterly blown, he realized he was finally a genuine dungeon crawler. Tears of triumph welled up, catching the spirit's attention. But the entity quickly snapped him back to harsh reality. No time to cry. A fresh wave of arachnids viciously swarmed him. Panic crept back into our rookie's mind. Despite holding immense power, he froze up. The spirit barked at him to lock in and stay hyper-vigilant. Just focus your vision, it commanded. Soda concentrated hard. Blazing infernos ignited within his pupils as he locked targets. He anticipated a toxic projectile. Swiftly dodging the lethal spit, the spirit revealed he was literally reading the beast's aura. Turns out, every single ounce of mana used by hunters and monsters fundamentally stems from the soul's core. Spotting the beast channeling energy was a direct perk of his new hack. Suddenly, another massive crawler lunged forward. The freak rushed in head-on. Smirking, Soda dared it to try. The creature desperately charged up another blast. Boom. Soda delivered a brutal roundhouse kick before it could fire. Stunned by his own agility, he launched a devastating uppercut. Our boy was absolutely shook. He was actually brawling. The spirit revealed that housing his father's essence granted wild perks. He was basically downloading years of veteran combat experience. It felt like his dad was physically guarding his back. This god-tier power felt like a warm embrace. Holding back emotional tears, an unbreakable confidence finally sparked within him. Empowered, he utterly obliterated a monster, but a second stalker sneakily charged a lethal beam right from his blind spot. Swoosh, he flawlessly evaded the blast, With eyes glowing like miniature suns, our MC locked onto his ugly opponent. Suddenly, a glowing target appeared. He eagerly asked the spirit if he had just exposed the beast's fatal flaw. Vaulting upwards, he slammed a fiery fist right into its core. The critical strike left devastating, scorching burn marks on impact. Out of nowhere, another creepy crawler blocked his path. But sensing his insane aura, the coward instantly did a U-turn. The pest sprinted away in pure terror, but our boy showed zero mercy. Channeling intense mana, he activated his finisher. Inferno Cage. The fleeing target was instantly incinerated. The battlefield finally fell dead silent. He exhaled a deep, exhausting breath. Pretty cracked for a noob, the spirit chuckled. It then urged Soda to communicate directly with his old man's ghost. He must uncover his father's final earthly regrets. Resolving those lingering burdens would permanently unlock this god-tier ability. That was the true magic of the anomaly trait. Soda questioned how this orb knew everything, but it just dodged him. Suda lingered in this twilight zone, only catching blurry glitches of wandering spirits. But with his newfound abilities fully unlocked, the veil shattered. His father's spirit materialized right in front of him, flashing a warm, bursting with pride kind of smile. The old man broke the heavy silence first, chuckling that it had been way too long. Our main character totally froze. Words caught in his throat before his dad instantly apologized, but Suda let his raw fury loose. He desperately screamed, demanding why he abandoned their sick mother. His dad confessed he only left to find her cure. That revelation hit Suda like an absolute truck. A deadly queen spider's venom had ravaged her body, and crafting the antidote required its venomous fangs. That drove him to blindly rush every single crimson portal. It was purely suicidal, yet right when victory seemed guaranteed, a hidden snare snapped shut. Our guy stood there, utterly paralyzed. The phantom continued his heavy confession. He owned up to ignoring everyone's desperate warnings, stubbornly plunging into back-to-back death traps. But rage still burned in Suda's chest. Even knowing the heartbreaking truth, he hated how his old man shouldered that massive burden solo, instead of trusting his own flesh and blood. Suda choked out that while he was weak back then, he still deserved to know the truth. The ghost fell completely silent, eyes blazing with pure conviction. Suda declared he would be the one to cure her now. He vowed to eclipse the most legendary hunter alive, his own father. Swearing to protect everyone, he promised to rise as the absolute strongest diver in existence. Seeing his little boy finally step up like a true warrior melted the father's heart. He wrapped his spectral arms around him, pouring out decades of unspoken love and immense pride. He unloaded every single hidden emotion, desperate to leave zero lingering regrets behind. Begging his son to shatter every power ceiling, the ghostly figure slowly began fracturing into shimmering, weightless orbs of light. Passing the ultimate torch, he whispered his final pleas to save their family. Tears streaming, Suda screamed a soul-deep thank you to the fading phantom. Instantly, a glowing blue system notification popped up, mirroring his very first awakening moment. The system confirmed Keiichiro Sasaki's worldly tethers were severed. The legendary skill, Radiant Blaze, was now 100% successfully transferred, granting absolute dominion over infernos. Standing completely solo in the quiet cavern, overwhelming drops of cathartic joy raced down his cheeks. Suddenly, the floating flame spirit cracked up, roasting him for dropping such a ridiculously massive flex about beating his dad. But the glowing orb gave props where due, completely retracting its previous insults about him being a total crybaby loser. When Suda attempted a deep, heartfelt thank you, the fiery companion instantly swatted the vibe away, dodging the cringe-worthy sincerity like an old childhood bestie. That super casual energy made Suda highly suspicious. He practically demanded the entity's true identity, wondering if they actually shared a hidden past. The Blaze attempted to spill the lore, but Static aggressively hijacked the mystical frequency, scrambling every single syllable into pure gibberish. Pushing through the magical interference, the voice violently stuttered. It was basically dropping frames like a cursed Discord call lagging at the absolute worst second. Despite the spirit virtually screaming the answer, the system completely censored it. It seemed the universe flagged that crucial secret as a literal reality bug. Giving up on the glitch, the spark told our boy to just assign it a nickname, though it explicitly demanded an incredibly badass title. Pondering for a hot second, Suda randomly blurted out the name Tamao. The spirit deadass froze, completely disgusted by the lame choice. It ruthlessly roasted his terrible naming sense, while the flustered teen scrambled to justify his absolute lack of creativity. He argued the glowing dude literally gave him creative freedom. Groaning in defeat, the magical entity threw in the metaphorical towel. A deal was a deal, so Tamao became official canon. Shifting gears, the newly named sidekick warned him about the massive mission still looming ahead. Startled for a split second, our hero's expression rapidly darkened into pure focus. radiating major main character energy with a calculated master plan. Tamao silently approved of this cold-blooded aura. While the dynamic duo confidently marched toward the crumbling dungeon exit, the spirit dropped a massive cheat code, revealing he could reunite with the ghost crew anytime by just stepping back into these exact crypts. Breaking through the threshold, the real world awaited. Meanwhile, right outside the Emerald Portal, Takuto's pathetic lackeys were violently wheezing for oxygen, completely hunched over after their cowardly marathon sprint. Their brains were totally short-circuiting over how a nightmare spider boss spawned inside a beginner zone, but logic had left the chat. Without warning, the peaceful green rift violently pulsed with a blinding, radioactive aura. The bullies stumbled backward in sheer terror. Ominous geometric halos locked around the dimensional tear, exposing its terrifying, authentic nature to the naked eye. An anomaly rift had awakened. The slower minion's brain absolutely lagged at the sight. Portal threat levels were universally color-coded by law, cascading from red down to green. Under standard system rules, you instantly judged your survival odds purely by the border's hue. However, those glowing rings signaled an absolute death sentence. The difficulty spike just skyrocketed straight to the apocalyptic S-rank tier. Thug number 1 was practically losing his mind. He shakily asked if they had basically stumbled into a slaughterhouse red zone. Pure panic flooded their veins about snitching to the Hunter Association. Could they seriously confess to trespassing a restricted dungeon like total idiots, while casually dropping that they ruthlessly assaulted a defenseless kid? One coward muttered that their arrogant boss absolutely earned his grim karma. Yet after a chilling second of dead silence, Thug number 2 suddenly realized their punching bag was still trapped inside that hellscape. They figured nobody would hunt down a total reject. One dead weight vanishing meant 0. But then, the Emerald Portal blasted open. Soda strolled out with ice in his veins. "My bad for being garbage," he smirked. The lackeys completely froze, witnessing a reborn predator. How the hell was this dead meat still breathing? Blazing hellfire danced in Soda's eyes, while the second lackey practically begged for answers. But our main character calmly analyzed his former bullies. Compared to those monstrous arachnids, these dudes were nothing but pathetic little bugs. The dirtbag instantly tried pinning Takuto's gruesome end on him. Even his own partner in crime looked absolutely dumbfounded by the sheer audacity. Ultimately, the coward chose the easy way out, framed Soda for the whole disaster. But our boy was completely out of patience. Utterly exhausted, he demanded a private chat with Kotora. The lackey just blinked, totally lost in the sauce. Feeling violently disrespected, the second goon snapped and launched a heavy haymaker. Yet Soda stood there like a mountain, totally unfazed. Bam! Soda countered instantly, burying a brutal hook into his jaw. The punk launched backward through the air, hitting the dirt cold. Kotora stood paralyzed. Did this loser actually awaken as a true dungeon crawler? Worse, his raw physical power was absolutely off the charts. Soda casually requested a massive favor. Dripping with nervous sweat and trembling violently, Kotora actually nodded. Together, they plunged back into the abyss. Deep in his bones, Kotora knew this was a straight-up suicide mission. But Soda dropped the truth. This was their one golden ticket into an irregular portal. Hesitating now meant losing their shot forever. Our main character radiated pure confidence, locked onto one single goal, completely annihilating that Spider Queen. Kotora nearly choked, realizing this insane suicide run was Soda's master plan all along. He desperately begged to call the cavalry instead. Before another word dropped, a booming voice echoed from the shadows. "Freeze." Soda and Kotora instinctively flinched, whipping around in pure panic. Materializing like a literal phantom, a massively built, overly confident dude stepped out, deadlocking their only escape route. This guy clearly wasn't stepping aside while he still had a pulse. Just who the heck is this random powerhouse, and why crash this dungeon? Having zero clue about this guy's identity, the duo demanded answers. But the mystery muscle completely refused to drop his name. No way he was sharing intel with shady trespassers. Soda attempted to smooth things over, but the stranger brutally shut him down. He aggressively noted Soda was the exact same kid passed out near the entrance earlier. Plus, standard dungeon protocol strictly demands a 3-man squad. Rocking up as a duo? Yeah, that just cranked their suspect meter all the way to max. Judging by his heavy tone, this enforcer had every legal right to lock them up instantly. He cracked his knuckles, ready to deliver a beatdown. Our main character desperately attempted one final explanation. Instead, the dude tightly clenched his fist and roared that he wasn't taking any excuses. The brute lunged forward, launching a devastating right hook. Soda slipped the strike beautifully, realizing peace was off the table, and ripped a vicious uppercut. The strike did absolutely nothing. The Titan just smirked maliciously, sarcastically praising Soda for having a little bite. Boom! He activated his signature skill, Man of Steel. His entire physique instantly morphed into unbreakable titanium, his knuckles hardening into literal weapons. He darkly warned that one solid connection would shatter bones. Instinctively, Sota sensed the terrifying weight of the enemy's aura. Fighting head-on meant a guaranteed game over. Making a split-second call, Sota totally bolted in the opposite direction. He tactically retreated, completely abandoning Kotora with the Titan. The steel freak roared furiously, demanding Sota turn around and throw down. This was supposed to be an epic brawl. Shocked to his core, Kotora frantically sprinted after Sota, while the metallic monster stalked them. He bellowed for them to step out and catch these hands fairly. Meanwhile, our duo crouched deep in the shadows, knowing a direct clash was suicide. Surviving barehanded was impossible right now, and blasting fire magic in an enclosed cave would literally cook them alive. Out of nowhere, an emerald wisp materialized right before Sota's eyes. The spectral entity instantly recognized that steel-plated scumbag. The target was Tuma. The ghost whispered that just seeing his murderer's face broke his slumber, and payback was officially on the menu. Intrigued, Sota asked about their bloody history. The floating phantom nearly glitched out, absolutely mind-blown that a living human could perceive him. Sota just gave a cold smirk. Yeah, buddy. Loud and clear. The phantom revealed their ancient, blood-soaked rivalry. They had previously agreed to bury the hatchet in a brutal, no-holds-barred duel to the death. Tragically, he caught a massive L. He plotted bitter vengeance, only to perish miserably inside these exact ruins. The ultimate humiliating defeat. Passing on was impossible with this heavy grudge. Feeling the vibe, Sota proposed a deadly alliance. Dripping with swagger, he finally stepped back into the light. Tuma puffed his chest out, bursting into arrogant laughter. He was absolutely hyped that his prey finally stopped running. Sota suddenly dropped the bomb. Igarashi Tuma. The steel giant froze dead in his tracks. How the heck did this rat know his identity? Winding up a devastating punch, Sota offered a mock apology. Suddenly, a crackling wave of emerald lightning blasted straight into Tuma. The intense voltage paralyzed his muscles, violently cratering him into the dirt. Looming over the fallen tank, the neon spirit drifted from Sota's core. Basking in glorious payback, the ghost deeply thanked our boy. His lingering earthly grudge was finally wiped clean. The time for farewells had finally come. Sota walked away, carrying the heavy weight of lingering regrets. Ding! The system interface glowed neon blue. A brand new ability unlocked. Stun. This lethal perk blasts enemies with high-voltage electricity. Meanwhile, Kotora caught up, stunned to see Toma completely wrecked. Sota shot him a sharp glare. Why track me down when you had the perfect chance to escape? Trembling, Kotora admitted he was totally clueless about his own worth. The brutal truth? Sota desperately needed his unique ability, the Poison Master. This overpowered trait could manipulate deadly toxins. Sota knew this kid could brew absolute miracle antidotes from scratch. Having witnessed this magic firsthand, Sota had a master plan. So, what's the mission? Kotora gulped. Our main character's eyes burned with fierce resolve. We slaughter the Queen Spider. He needed that poison mastery to cure his dying mother. Despite being a non-combatant, Kotora bravely stepped up, but he pleaded for one massive favor. Please, you have to save Takuto. Tears welling up, Kotora poured his heart out. You saved my life. You triggered my awakening. You are literally my savior. Sota's expression turned ice cold. Absolutely not. I will never forgive that traitor. However, he threw the kid a lifeline. Rescue him yourself. My only target is annihilating that monstrous spider. Kotora froze in shock. I won't stop you, Sota vowed, turning his back. A grateful smile finally broke through Kotora's fear. Suddenly, Tuma snapped out of his paralysis. The boys flinched, but the steel brawler pulled them into a massive, crushing bear hug. You guys are gonna make me bawl, he cried. Utterly bewildered, our duo just gained a heavy hitter for this death trap. Bro, why didn't you just explain? Tuma whined. Our main character scoffed. You threw punches before I could even breathe. Tuma eagerly volunteered for the rescue mission, but Sota frowned. Dragging him into this bloodbath felt way too risky. But the brawler refused to back down. No way I'm sitting this out. I'm doing this on my own terms. Boom. The starving, bloodthirsty queen spider dropped right before them. 0 escape routes left. Toma just flashed a wild, manic grin. Metallic aura engulfed his fists. He stood united with Sota and Kotora. The nightmare-inducing queen spider towered over them, ready to devour them whole. Sweating bullets, Kotora whispered. Hey, what's your max dungeon clearance level? Tuma bragged about dominating purple gates, but this abyssal red gate was uncharted hell. Still, facing his ultimate trial, he wouldn't hold back an ounce of power. Tuma braced to tank the incoming hit, but Sota boldly marched straight toward the monster, leaving his squad absolutely speechless. Pure vengeance burned in his soul. He would butcher this beast to avenge his fallen parents. The queen lunged, yet Sota sidestepped the lethal strikes flawlessly, dancing through the danger zone. like an absolute battle-hardened veteran. Toxic webs shot through the air, but Sota vaulted right off the sticky threads. His teammates watched, jaws hitting the floor. Sota's lethal precision made him look like a legendary Red Gate conqueror, but Kotora knew the impossible truth. Sota awakened mere hours ago. How was he fighting with such god-tier mastery? Suddenly, blistering crimson flames erupted from Sota's palms. Holy crap! Fire magic? Tuma gasped. This dude was holding back. That sheer badassery ignited Toma's fighting spirit. Refusing to be outshined, he channeled his aura into unbreakable steel fists. His Man of Steel ability hit max output. He launched a bone-shattering haymaker right into the spider's massive leg. Clank, the impact bounced right off. His ultimate punch barely even scratched the beast's armor. Caught off guard, Toma missed the fatal blind spot. The monster's horrifying fangs loomed right behind his exposed neck. Death stared Tuma in the face, until Sota blitzed through the air, slamming a devastating blow onto its skull. Electric shock stun. Blinding emerald lightning erupted from his fingertips, violently frying the creature's spine. But this raid boss was insanely tanky. The paralysis merely ticked it off. They scrambled back. Sota hatched a high IQ strategy. Toma draws aggro, while Sota roasts it. The brawler instantly agreed. Pushing past his limits, Toma transformed his entire body into living metal. Overdrive engaged, he was ready to brawl. The enraged monster realized its fangs were useless. Smirking, Tuma relentlessly mocked the beast. Is that all you've got, bug? But his steel armor was draining fast. Sota had mere seconds to land the kill. Screeching furiously, the boss snapped its vile jaws at Toma, hook, line, and sinker. Sota instantly catapulted himself, off his teammate's shoulders. Flower flame. His fiery fist pulverized the monster's joint, causing an ear-piercing shriek of agony. Scorching heat melted its armor. The beast staggered backward. Fire was its ultimate weakness. The squad pushed their momentum forward. Kotora watched in pure awe. This insane duo might actually clutch the win. Now, it was his turn to rescue Takuto. He sprinted down the dark tunnel, until a lone sneaker dropped right at his feet. His blood ran cold. It belonged to Takuto. The monstrous queen spider ruthlessly feasted on Takuto's lower half, while Kotora unleashed a devastating, blood-curdling scream. Blinded by rage, Kotora charged in for a heavy strike, but the beast instantly countered, bringing a massive leg crashing down. Mere inches from a fatal blow, Toma lunged forward, taking the brutal hit as the razor-sharp appendage impaled his own back. His impenetrable steel armor completely shattered, raining metallic fragments across the blood-soaked floor. Had his ultimate defense actually been that fragile? Suda refused to freeze. He exploded into motion, charging the beast head-on to rescue his newfound squad. But a massive claw swatted him like a fly, violently launching his body into the unforgiving catacomb walls. The beast cocooned Suda in sticky webbing, violently hoisting him high into the air as its foul, venom-dripping jaws unhinged wide open. Death loomed inches away, but this was exactly Suda's master plan. He actually needed the terrifying monster right in his face. Faking unconsciousness, he suddenly incinerated the restrictive webs, leaving Tuma utterly speechless. Suda snatched a razor-sharp shard of fallen steel armor and viciously plunged it deep into the creature's eyes. Instantly, Suda triggered a devastating, high-voltage electric shock, surging raw lightning directly through its nervous system. Igniting his free hand with blazing fire, he uppercut the beast's jaws. That brutal combo literally roasted the monster internally. Following one massive, violent convulsion, the giant corpse slammed lifelessly down. Utilizing Tuma's shattered armor, Suda successfully pulled off the impossible. He finally secured the ultimate chance to cure his dying mother. Tuma and Kotora hovered near Takuto's mangled corpse. The pure trauma totally broke Kotora, sending him spiraling into uncontrollable, agonizing tears. Tuma quietly volunteered to carry their fallen comrade for a proper burial. He then confidently walked up to Suda, praising his insane clutch against the terrifying boss. However, Suda humbly shook his head, insisting Tuma's massive sacrifice secured their victory. Tuma remained absolutely stunned by Suda's dual elemental powers. That specific lightning strike strongly reminded him of an old, bitter rival. Suda revealed a huge secret, admitting he inherited that lightning directly from Goto. Respectfully, he wanted to visit his grave. Tuma instantly froze in sheer disbelief. There was absolutely zero grave to visit because Goto was totally alive. He called Suda heavily mistaken. Tuma aggressively confirmed crossing paths with the guy just yesterday, leaving zero room for doubt. Our main character stood completely paralyzed. A blinding migraine suddenly struck, making Suda violently grip his skull. The fiery spirit's deep voice mysteriously echoed inside his mind. You have touched the fundamental core of this world. A buried memory violently resurfaced. Suda, chilling inside a classroom, alongside an unknown girl. Yet her identity remained a total blank. Suda's physical limits entirely shattered, causing him to instantly black out as overwhelming darkness swallowed him. The mystical spirit kept speaking, heavily implying that his dying mother wasn't the only crucial person he desperately needed to rescue. Later, inside a sterile hospital room, Tuma intensely questioned if this exact guy matched the spiritual entity Suda encountered down in the brutal dungeon. Our hero completely verified the crazy match. Despite surviving that hellish spider raid, the bitter rivalry between Toma and Goto was heavily escalating. Tuma brutally roasted Goto, jokingly asking if he was secretly an evil twin because he looked straight up menacing. "I am completely an only child," Goto dryly snapped back. Toma instantly bought the excuse, honestly treating Goto like an incredibly spoiled, entitled brat. The duo kept violently bickering like immature toddlers, totally ignoring the quiet hospital environment. Suda desperately intervened to diffuse their loud, chaotic energy, especially since random patients were intensely staring. The awkward silence finally hit, allowing Suda to seriously question if they could safely confirm that the brutal portal they raided was completely locked down. Both veteran hunters confidently guaranteed the absolute safety of the area. They thoroughly swept the area before leaving. Whenever a dungeon's main boss is obliterated, the volatile spatial rift instantly stabilizes, completely nullifying any future monster outbreaks. Expressing deep gratitude for their hardcore backup, Suda excused himself to go check on an emotionally wrecked Kotora. Watching the kid leave, Goto skeptically questioned if Suda truly soloed the final monster. Tuma confidently vouched, confirming Suda straight-up murdered a lethal Red Gate boss. Goto was utterly mind-blown. Inheriting overpowered combat skills directly from lingering souls was actually completely real after all. That absolutely broken potential perfectly matched Suda's fearless combat IQ. Suddenly, a brilliantly strategic plan sparked right inside Tuma's calculating mind. He definitely needed to recruit Suda. Toma smoothly tried cashing in a massive favor from his rival, but Goto immediately rejected the nonsense. Predictably, the two grown men resumed loudly screaming at one another. Meanwhile, outside, Kotora meticulously processed the toxic organs harvested from the giant arachnid to isolate the deadly venom. Suda arrived just as the complex analysis nearly finished, meaning the life-saving cure was practically ready. Kotora anxiously checked on Suda's physical condition, highly concerned about his sudden blackout. Back in the hellish dungeon, Suda expressed genuine gratitude, but Kotora guiltily confessed his injuries were minor, tearfully apologizing for being total dead weight. Suda immediately shut down that guilt. Watching loved ones face absolute death shatters your nerves. A crippling fear our hero completely understood deep down. The trauma strongly echoed his own parents' tragedy. While Takuto's toxic vibe still heavily annoyed Suda, he profoundly respected Kotora's deep, unbreakable loyalty toward his fallen friend. "You are truly built differently," Kotora emotionally admitted. Our clueless hero barely processed the huge compliment before a miraculous beep confirmed the life-saving antidote was successfully formulated. Clutching the antidote from our genius poison master, Kotora shoved it into Soda's hands, urging him to sprint to his mom. Overflowing with gratitude, our main character bolted down the hospital corridors like a blur. This was the ultimate endgame. Her salvation rested in his palms. Staring at her lifeless form, he carefully tipped the miraculous cure past her lips. A single drop fell, and boom, a radiant aura enveloped her. Her eyelids fluttered open. The lethal toxin vanished. The second she regained consciousness, a massive weight crushed Soda's chest. Seeing life return unleashed a floodgate of tears. Her gaze locked onto him, instantly realizing how much he had leveled up. They broke down completely, sharing a deeply heart-wrenching reunion. The heavy conversation shifted to his late dad. She softly asked about his true, lingering feelings. Our main character confessed that saving her life was his dad's ultimate dying wish. He revealed the heavy mantle passed down, inheriting his raw emotions, aura, unbreakable resolve, and the devastating Kachiro flames. His mom sat utterly stunned, but this epic revelation terrified her. Panic lacing her voice, she desperately questioned his next move, now that this impossible quest was actually over. Soda froze momentarily. What came next? Yet, deep within his awakening soul, his epic destiny was clear. He swore to climb the absolute peak of dungeon divers, forging a reality where innocent lives are never snatched away again. Those were the exact words she dreaded. When asked if she opposed this dangerous fate, she fired back a brutally honest, instant yes. Picturing her boy throwing himself into death traps tore her heart to shreds. Yet, she painfully realized, his parents' legacy forged this heavy burden. Surrendering, she admitted she had no right to crush his ultimate destiny. An unexpected, wholesome blush crept across Soda's cheeks. She demanded one unbreakable oath. He must fiercely prioritize his own survival, just as much as protecting everyone else. Losing him would completely shatter her soul. Sealing the vow, they collapsed into a desperate, tear-soaked embrace, sharing their radiant warmth. The broken family was finally whole again, but the second Sota slid the hospital doors open, a highly suspicious vibe hit his radar. Tuma and Kotora huddled nearby, frantically scrubbing their teary eyes, acting totally cool. They eavesdropped on the entire emotional roller coaster. Panicking, Tuma swore they weren't snooping, but our main character just flashed a soft smile, totally letting them off the hook. However, a massive threat loomed. Sota illegally raided a restricted catacomb. How on earth would they hide this from the furious association? Toma smirked, oozing absolute confidence. His elite faction was already erasing the tracks. Then, he dropped a massive recruitment offer on Sota. If conquering the absolute pinnacle of dungeon diving was his true goal, signing up with their overpowered squad was the ultimate shortcut. Meanwhile, miles away, inside a menacing yellow gate, heavy boots crunched over an absolute mountain of slaughtered catacomb beasts. A suited guy frantically bowed, apologizing for Tuma's rogue actions. His words targeted a striking white-haired alpha casually chilling on a throne of corpses. The silver-haired beast just waved it off, smirking. Destiny was calling, and he was dying to meet a rookie named Sota Sasaki. Officially, a team submits their guild formation papers directly to the strict higher-ups at the Dungeon Diver Association, gaining official clearance to aggressively raid catacombs and absolutely annihilate massive boss monsters. Basically, joining means legally binding yourself to endless, bloody dungeon warfare. Strolling down a bright, sun-drenched street, Tuma hyped himself up, proudly bragging about his spot in the legendary, world-shaking guild known as Tenru. Kotora's eyes sparkled as he fanboyed hard, stating Tenru wasn't just Japan's ultimate pride, they were an absolute global powerhouse. This monstrous guild splits into 10 elite divisions, each commanded by a god-tier captain wielding unimaginable combat prowess. Reigning supreme over these monsters sits the almighty commander-in-chief. Toma approvingly slapped Kotora's back, blown away by his hardcore nerd knowledge. Nostalgia hit Kotora hard, recalling how their fallen friend Takuto worshipped Tenru. He relentlessly grinded solo, desperately manifesting his dream to join their ranks. Tuma fell completely silent. Stepping in, our main character flexed his own intel, casually dropping the legendary commander's actual name, Yamato Sumeragi. This titan single-handedly crushed world-ending catastrophes globally, forcing the Japanese Association to officially crown him the undisputed strongest human alive. Just imagining standing before an absolute god sent shivers down Sota's spine. Kotora asked if the pressure got to him, but our main character just grinned, flashing zero fear. A blazing fire of pure gratitude burned in his eyes. Totally hyped for this epic encounter, Tuma's jaw nearly dropped. The rookie possessed a terrifyingly fearless aura. Suddenly, they pulled right up to the legendary headquarters. Expecting a towering fortress, they stared at a busted shack. But this trashy exterior was just the ultimate camouflage. Winking confidently, Tuma promised an epic plot twist. The second he cranked the rusty door open, an insanely massive, jaw-dropping domain expanded entirely before them. The interior was a mind-blowing, sci-fi utopia, completely shattering their initial pathetic expectations. Right as Toma inflated his chest to start gloating, a terrifying shadow materialized behind him, violently karate-chopping the back of his skull. The angry newcomer aggressively roasted Tuma for pulling a rogue dungeon stunt, leaving the poor guild to clean up his massive political mess. Flailing defensively, Tuma swore Yamato authorized the mission, yet the furious man relentlessly continued his merciless beatdown. Enter Toma's older brother. While unleashing a relentless flurry of strikes, he interrogated Tuma about shoving his paperwork onto Goku from Squad 2. The question sparked a flashback to Goku's earlier taunts. That rat definitely snitched. The siblings kept clashing and roasting each other. Suda stepped in, attempting a rescue, but the older brother smoothly interrupted, dropping Suda and Kotora's names. He's Yusei Igarashi, Tenru's deputy commander. Yusei offered a deep bow, covering for his brother's chaos. He confessed Tuma was always a reckless meathead. Our shy main character panicked, insisting Tuma actually carried them. Suddenly, a newcomer strolled in, claiming Yusei was riding Toma way too hard. It was the absolute unit from the catacombs, previously chilling on monster corpses, Yamato Sumeragi. He defended Tuma's hero complex, telling Yusei to chill out. Suda completely froze. The legendary commander-in-chief seemed bizarrely normal. Suda just stared at the shifting dynamic. Yamato looked tiny next to the Igarashi giants. Suda flared his skill, scanning their souls. Yusei radiated absolute power over Tuma, but Yamato's aura felt shockingly basic, almost non-existent. Yamato locked eyes with Suda, hyped to finally meet. Suda's anomaly skill had heavily impressed him. Our main character found Yamato incredibly laid back. Then the commander dropped a loaded question. Did Suda truly crave absolute power? Yamato offered a frontline ticket to absolute peak strength. Suda accepted. Yusei tried protesting, but Yamato swore he would keep his immense power firmly dialed down. Plus, Sauda was practically vibrating with hype. Defeated, Yusei promised to intervene if things turned lethal. Yamato marched into the arena. Bam! The entire environment warped instantly. The transition was blindingly fast. Suda's brain lagged behind the reality marble. Yamato casually raised his left fist, telegraphing an incoming strike. Burning eyes flared to life. Suda stayed hyper-vigilant, expecting a massive, god-tier skill from the leader. Yamato's soul remained a terrifying void. Suddenly, the atmosphere shattered. Blazing orange energy erupted from the commander. Flash step. Yamato was point blank. The devastating blow connected, launching Soda through the concrete barrier. His squad screamed his name in absolute terror. The brutal impact completely shattered the reinforced wall. Suda felt like a bomb detonated. But wait, Yamato's terrifying soul actually mirrored a human silhouette. Struggling up, he realized the terrifying truth. No skills involved, just an oceanic pressure of raw aura. Yamato checked if he was tapping out. That sparked a wild realization inside Suda's mind. Retreat? Never. Adrenaline spiked his system. Internal flames roared to life as he forced himself upright. Yamato blitzed him again, a lethal blur, but Suda barely evaded. Yamato looked surprised, though secretly impressed. A barrage of fists rained down, with Suda barely weaving through. One blocked hit would mean absolute game over, instantly shattering his stance. He desperately knew his visual prowess alone couldn't track this monster anymore. He needed instinct, reading every micro-movement, weaponizing his entire nervous system to dodge the onslaught. Clashing against the absolute peak. What a legendary, once-in-a-lifetime flex. Suda's veins pumped liquid fire as Yamato mercilessly pressed the attack. He craved the relentless pressure, pushed the limits, faster, heavier strikes. Yamato gleefully unleashed a terrifying storm of brutal martial arts, chaining infinite combos. Yet Suda slipped past death itself. Battered and bruised, he fully embraced the carnage. Yusei watched in absolute disbelief, deeply respecting the rookie's insane, unyielding willpower against a literal god. Toma demanded his brother's analysis. Yusei smirked, admitting this crazy spar was actually forging a diamond. Searing heat coalesced. Sauda's knuckles ignited, wrapping his dominant hand in wild, flickering, destructive flames. He locked onto the commander, begging to unleash his ultimate output. Yamato's casual demeanor instantly shifted. Yamato declared he was already at peak power. Asking for permission completely killed the battle's raw vibe. He dared Suda to bring the absolute heat. Our main character dug deep, channeling his maximum output. The flaming punch rocketed toward Yamato, detonating on impact. Yamato's eyes practically bulged. Pure shock hit him. That blazing technique mirrored Saitama Sasaki perfectly, the undisputed god of fire magic. Nostalgia and pure hype flooded Yamato's veins. He loudly praised Suda's insane potential. Yamato smirked, praising the kid's raw grit. He straight up admitted this rookie was growing on him fast. Getting acknowledged by the absolute apex predator felt amazing. Our main character was dripping sweat and running on fumes, but Hell Week was not wrapping up just yet. Yamato slowly lifted his right hand. A blinding, sun flare aura violently erupted around his entire body. The top dog was about to crank the dial to 11. Suddenly, crimson sirens shattered the tension. A frantic emergency broadcast ripped through the intercom. Monsters breached the perimeter. The room went dead silent. A catastrophic dungeon break just slammed into Sakurazawa town. Soda's muscles were screaming from sparring, but reality offered zero breaks. The battle-hungry glint in Yamato's eyes immediately turned ice cold. The combat session was just hitting its peak. Now, playtime was officially over. When a dungeon boss survives a gate opening for too long, the horde bleeds into our reality. Innocent civilians become prey. Yamato clicked his tongue, explaining that urban gates are strictly monitored. They never just burst like this. This disaster meant a raid party had completely choked their dungeon run. The commander instantly flipped his switch from mentor to absolute leader, taking total control of the chaos. He barked at Yusei for a rapid head count. Which squads were combat ready? Teams 1, 2, and 5. Yusei fired back instantly. Yamato deployed his assets like a grandmaster. Squad 5 was put on full civilian evacuation detail, making public safety their absolute priority. Squads 1 and 2 were ordered to fan out and lock down a solid perimeter, enforcing a 5-kilometer quarantine zone around Sakurazawa. Not a single monster was allowed past that line. Yusei and Tomo's units were assigned the actual gate suppression. Catching his breath, Soda asked the big boss what his play was. The commander flashed a deadly smirk. He was going to dive headfirst into the bloodbath and solo the stragglers infesting the streets. Without skipping a beat, Soda begged to tag along. He needed to witness high-tier combat firsthand. Yamato locked eyes with him, delivering a chilling warning. Fall behind by a single step, and he becomes monster food. Our main character did not flinch. His eyes burned with pure resolve. So Yamato greenlit the request. Kotora got drafted into the vanguard too, strictly acting as Soda's personal bodyguard out in the wild. The Alpha's voice boomed through the hall, dropping his final decree. Time to hunt. And dying was strictly forbidden. Deep inside the red zone, Yamato and Soda blurred through the ruined streets. Kotora was seriously sweating to match their insane velocity. Their speed was completely broken. Kotora panicked watching Soda. Jumping straight from hellish sparring into a literal war zone was suicide. Wasting zero time, Yamato became a human wrecking ball, pulverizing beasts with bare knuckles. He tossed a glance backward, spotting Soda losing steam. The kid was running on empty. Was this raid way above his pay grade? Soda's knees suddenly buckled, sending him crashing into the concrete. Kotora slid next to him, totally frantic. Tasting dirt, Sota violently cursed himself. Was he really going to be dead weight right now? Kotora's face painted a grim picture. In his gut, he knew this mission was totally out of Soda's league. A total death trap. The smart play was letting Yamato and the elites carry the raid. Soda had massive guts, but his stamina bar was sitting at 0. Kotora practically begged him to stop risking his neck for no reason. The kid already proved his worth, and sitting back while the boss soloed the swarm was perfectly fine. But Soda gritted his teeth. Retreating was no longer in his vocabulary, refusing to live with the haunting regret of being weak. For the very first time, he was gripping the steering wheel of his own fate. He craved absolute power. Folding right here meant surrendering his own soul, not just a battle. His driving spark would instantly die, and he was completely done faking it. His ultimate goal was crystal clear. He was going to stand beside Yamato. Triggered by that raw ambition, Kotora whipped out a glass vial. His poison alchemy flared to life, brewing a chaotic mixture in seconds. He shoved it into Soda's hands, nearly making the kid drop it. This liquid cheat code forcibly shatters human limits and supercharges physical specs, but the massive buff was strictly temporary. And the backlash? Brutal, Kotora warned him. Soda glared at the glowing liquid. He took a single, jagged breath, weighing his options. Drink the poison, or stay useless. While Yamato was busy turning monsters into red mist, Yusei radioed in. The dungeon core was totally empty. The alpha boss was gone. The nightmare scenario was real. It was roaming the civilian streets. Their only tactical option left was plugging the gate before more trash mobs spawned. Mid-transmission, a towering, muscle-bound ogre crashed down right in Yamato's path. Yamato sized it up, guessing it was the stray boss, a piece of cake. But suddenly, a blazing blur rocketed past his shoulder. The commander's jaw dropped. It was Soda. His fist, wreathed in roaring flames, meteor smashed directly into the beast's ugly mug. Kotora's toxic buff had blasted Soda's stats through the roof. The alchemist was absolutely stunned. Tossing a grin back, our main character gave his thanks. He had chugged the mystery juice without a second thought. The adrenaline spike was instant, flooding his veins with terrifying, explosive energy. Soda immediately blitzed forward into the fray. Left in the dust, Kotora could only scream at the top of his lungs to hype him up. The massive ogre was launched like a rag doll, crumpling into an unconscious heap. Yamato watched, completely blown away. But the hype was cut short. Another colossal titan stepped out of the shadows. Soda stepped up, his aura erupting into blinding fire. Meeting Yamato's gaze, his voice practically dripped with absolute conviction. He refused to back down. Even with that massive power gap, he would keep hunting Yamato down. Suddenly, a colossal shadow loomed behind him out of thin air. Yamato just let out a heavy sigh. Total buzzkill. But then, something caught his eye. Soda's whole vibe had shifted. Raw energy bled from him endlessly as his pupils morphed into a piercing, deadly gold. Fierce, untamed tangerine fire violently erupted around his entire form. Yamato revealed the massive beast blocking their path was the dungeon boss, the mastermind behind this entire catastrophic monster outbreak. Slaying it would not magically wipe the slate clean, though. Any escaped stragglers roaming the real world would still be a lethal problem. Yet, reading the burning intensity in Soda's eyes, Yamato offered him the solo kill. Without missing a single beat, Soda locked it in. Yamato fully trusted the kid's potential. Still, he kept his guard up, ready to intervene if the raid went south. In a flash, Yamato completely vanished. He scaled the city skyline with such godly speed that Soda could not even track him. The ultimate solo carry was officially on. Inhaling deeply, he centered his mind. The stage was set, and he carried the team's trust. The Titan hoisted its giant club, bringing it crashing down with devastating momentum. Soda narrowly evaded the strike, but the vibe felt totally off. This monster's armor was absolutely busted. The strategy seemed easy enough. Close the gap, break its stance, and melt it down with scorching hellfire. Soda rushed in blind, unleashing a merciless barrage of blazing strikes. Every single fist exploded with heat. Completely useless. The barrage only managed to piss the Titan off. Howling with rage, it backhanded Soda, launching him brutally through solid concrete. The impact was absolutely soul-crushing. Sputtering crimson, he barely managed to stick the harsh landing. Meanwhile, the beast stood there completely unfazed. Then, the grim reality checked him hard. This boss had high-tier fire resistance. It tanked the onslaught, taking absolutely zero damage. His blazing aura, his ultimate carry tool, was basically just scratching the surface. That realization shattered his confidence way more than the physical blow. Sure, lightning could paralyze the tank, but crowd control does not equal an execution. Scrambling for a winning strat, a buried memory sparked in his mind. The ancient wisdom from the fireball spirit echoed back. Never rely entirely on your father's legacy. Flames hold massive destructive power, but not everything turns to ash, the spirit warned. Soda instinctively clapped back, claiming he already mastered that lesson. Yet, the entity challenged his arrogance. Are you absolutely certain? It humbled his ego instantly. Raw stats do not justify reckless aggro plays. As a final trump card, the spirit passed down one ultimate technique. Initially, the hype was real. Then the spirit's heavy warning kicked in. This was not some automatic, guaranteed win condition. It was a massive gamble. Even the most legendary top rankers struggled to trigger this secret skill consistently. Only a warrior possessing absolute soul clarity could wield its power. Soda's impatience peaked. Just drop the tutorial already. A smash, a flying kick, just name it. The spirit clarified the physical form meant absolutely nothing. The true secret was condensing every single drop of his spiritual aura into one catastrophic hit. He protested, claiming he always maxed out his stats in battle. The spirit instantly rejected that logic. True mastery requires knowing when to hold your firepower back. Life force naturally circulates from the soul throughout your entire system. Bottlenecking that insane energy into a singular focal point is brutally difficult. Even seasoned veterans can barely compress a tiny fraction of it. Yet, mastering your inner core allows for flawless energy manipulation, unleashing an absolutely devastating damage multiplier. Epic, in theory, but requiring god-tier concentration. In a hardcore deathmatch where one slip means game over, that level of zen is practically impossible. And Soda was currently fighting for his life. Finding perfect clarity mid-slaughter? Insanity. That is exactly why the spirit labeled it a highly situational ultimate move. Then came the ultimate reality check. If the stat gap is totally insurmountable, tactical retreat is the only option. Snapping back to reality, Soda squared up against the colossal raid boss once more. Zero panic this time. He was fully locked in. Diving into absolute mental clarity, his fiery aura surged. It grew blindingly brilliant, scorching hot, yet flawlessly stable. The chaotic battlefield went dead silent. His broken bones went numb. Clashing with Yamato had essentially been the perfect tutorial for this exact phase. The behemoth let out a deafening roar, trying to break his mental armor. Soda remained utterly unfazed. The monster initiated its lethal charge. Suddenly, all the puzzle pieces aligned. The enlightenment hit him, igniting his raging inferno. Soda blitzed straight into the danger zone. Launching himself skyward, he uncapped his limits, radiating an unprecedented wave of burning heat. But this aura felt completely transcendent. Locking onto the Titan's skull, he struck. Emerald lightning violently crackled. Critical stun. The beast completely glitched out in sheer panic. That microsecond window was his golden ticket. Staring absolute death in the face, he buried his supercharged, blazing fist right into its monstrous jaw. As the devastating impact landed, the legendary title of the technique rang through his very core, Soul Blast. A cataclysmic pillar of fire detonated from his knuckles, eclipsing his previous limits. The destructive shockwave was absolutely world-shattering. Launching that monstrous ogre across the battlefield, Suda finally slammed back down to earth. Scorching flames devoured the behemoth completely. It violently crashed, never to rise again. Suda slowly raised his trembling fist, panting heavily, savoring the hard-fought victory. He felt it deep down he was finally approaching Yamato's god-tier realm. Suddenly, a dizzying wave of exhaustion struck him hard. He collapsed, his stamina completely draining away. Wait, not right now. He instantly recalled that mysterious potion Kotora handed him, and her grim warning about the violent backlash. So, this was the brutal toll. Dozens more ogres stomped forward, trapping him inside a deadly kill ring. His knees buckled while his vision faded to black. A single grim thought echoed in his mind. Is this seriously game over? Meanwhile, Yamato gazed up at a massive skyscraper, smirking as he realized it was the absolute perfect vantage point. He vaulted into the clouds, admiring the breathtaking cityscape. Touching down on the rooftop, he immediately radioed Goto. Goto confirmed that Squad 2 had completely locked down all hostile targets within a 5-kilometer radius of the tower. Squad 1 mirrored the success. The chief commander grinned. Thanking his men, it was finally time to unleash hell. The stage was set. Yamato suddenly erupted in blazing blue energy. The brilliant aura surged, instantly devouring the entire skyscraper before swallowing the surrounding blocks. Back with Suda, a swarm of bloodthirsty ogres had him dead to rights. Zero time left to strategize. He just needed to move. Forget winning, this was pure survival mode. Dying in a hellhole like this wasn't an option. Ignoring the agony, he stood ready to tank their strikes. Suddenly, a blinding blue flash ripped through the air, instantly frying every single monster. What on earth was that insane strike? Then it clicked that overwhelming flex was Yamato's aura. Standing like a god on the rooftop, Yamato raised his glowing fist. His crackling blue energy blanketed the entire 5-kilometer zone. Yamato casually noted the massive cast time. Smirking, he chanted, "Seize!" His ultimate skill, punishment, activated, obliterating every trapped monster instantly. Across the massive battlefield, the menacing beasts violently crashed down, utterly wiped from existence. Suda stood there completely paralyzed by awe. He miraculously survived the ultimate buzzer beater, walking away without a single scratch. Then the chilling realization hit him. That terrifying aura wasn't just insanely huge, nor just blanketing the entire metropolis. Its sole mission was to mercilessly execute every last ogre. Footsteps approached. Our boy turned around, breathing a massive sigh of relief just to be breathing. He was totally safe. The commander-in-chief strolled over, cheerfully praising Suda for holding the line so flawlessly. So this is the absolute peak of power, our protagonist realized. Deep down, he knew Yamato was still leagues above him. Suda's vision rapidly blurred before he totally blacked out. Thankfully, Yamato smoothly caught him mid-fall. Yamato then caught a crazy detail. The boss monster's terrifying presence had vanished way before punishment even dropped. Suda's only mission was stalling for time. Yet, mind-blowingly, the kid actually managed to solo the final boss all by himself. This Suda kid was built different. Suddenly, two elites approached Yamato, playfully roasting him for pulling another painfully flashy stunt. Meet Keikaru Amami, Tenru's first squad captain, and his vice captain, Karen Sawaragi. Keikaru joked that Yamato was definitely getting a massive complaint from headquarters for recklessly flexing his aura citywide. Yamato immediately fired back with his own savage comeback. In his eyes, sweet-talking the brass was completely Keikaru's problem. The chief was just thrilled he got to drop a cinematic nuke and bag a cracked new recruit. Keikaru curiously asked for the rookie's identity. The name was Suda Sasaki. Yamato handed the boy over to the first squad, ordering them to train him well. But what the chief completely missed was that Keikaru secretly planned to poach Suda regardless. A vivid memory of Suda's mom surfaced, resting on her bed, clutching a worn scrapbook. A warm smile graced her face as she stared at an old family photograph, featuring Keikaru. Honestly, mentoring Suda had always felt like a massive destiny he was bound to fulfill. Cut to the Heavenly Wolf headquarters, the ultimate arena where hunters endlessly sparred. Tuma and Suda locked into a vicious duel. The absolute menace wasn't holding back, instantly hardening his entire body into unbreakable steel. He violently taunted Suda, daring the rookie to strike first. Our boy just gave a cold nod before exploding forward with insane speed, only for Tuma to bark that real monsters never wait for setups. Tuma launched a brutal right hook, catching Suda completely off guard. The devastating blow cracked straight into his skull. Tuma fiercely scolded him. Suda's ultimate attack was way too telegraphed to land. Our hero stubbornly argued it saved him earlier. Sure, massive ultimates deal insane damage, but the endless wind-up makes you a sitting duck. Tuma lectured him on mastering battle pacing before dropping huge nukes. After all, that reckless stunt left Suda paralyzed for days. The whole squad was panicking over his condition. It was a brutal recoil from Soul Roar. He desperately needed hardcore grinding sessions. Suddenly, an unknown voice cut through the tension, commanding them to stop goofing around. Our clueless protagonist tilted his head, asking who she was. Enter Karen Sawaragi, Squad 1's fierce vice captain. The total disrespect instantly sparked her temper, and she fiercely demanded he watch his mouth. She held high authority, while he was literally just a low-tier grunt. Instantly, Tuma and Karen clashed like total toddlers. The massive ego trip completely blindsides Soda. She is ridiculously young for a vice captain. Our main character silently hyped her up, while Tuma finally dressed. Karen's piercing gaze locked onto our boy. Soda respectfully bows, announcing his fresh placement into Squad 1. She already peeped his file, the fluke newbie who miraculously clapped a boss monster. She also knows his parents were absolute legends in the conquering game. She ruthlessly implies he only got drafted through sheer nepotism. Eavesdropping teammates spark her toxic curiosity. Why carry a scrub like him? Tuma nearly triggered another fight, but Soda intervened. He confessed she spit straight facts. Yet, Soda trusts the captain spotted his hidden talent. It might be weak now, but the spark exists. Keeping his cool, he humbly requests her elite guidance. This polite flex completely stuns Karen. She anticipated raging teenage angst, not pure class. That humble mindset actually scores him a training session. Boom! Karen instantly warps their surroundings. The concrete jungle violently shifts into a vibrant, sun-drenched, grassy battlefield. She fiercely warned Soda that her combat style is zero joke. If he choked, she could nerf her power. Our main character instantly folded. Yes, absolutely do that. That cowardly response just fueled her blazing fury. What absolute trash. She barely wanted to scratch him. Yet he was already boiling her blood. Soda was definitely going to pay. Karen violently lunged. Rage of Gaia. The earth roared and shattered. Thick dirt swallowed Soda inside a suffocating prison. She taunts his helpless state. Begging might save him? Boom! Scorching flames obliterate the earthen cage. Soda violently smashes through the wreckage. He claps back with cheeky sarcasm, praising the vice captain for constructing such a cozy mud hut. Karen freezes at the bold counter, her pride totally wounded. She unleashes another fierce strike, weaponizing the terrain. Soda plummeted as the treacherous quicksand ravenously devoured his legs. Karen blitzed forward, her fist locked and loaded. But Soda, fully dialed in, engulfed his fists in blazing infernos and launched a devastating counterpunch. Tuma freaks out. They are literally out for blood. He desperately screams at them to chill before somebody gets wrecked. Their fists hurtled toward a catastrophic collision, but right before impact, a massive force intercepted the blow. A mysterious figure caught both their deadly strikes. The massive shockwave launched them, flying. A split second later, they both crashed hard into the dirt. Soda gasped, utterly bewildered. Captain Kakuru had casually materialized to block the carnage. They desperately needed to chill. Karen aggressively stammers excuses, while Soda glitches in pure shock. Who is this absolute unit? Kakuru smoothly introduces himself. What an absolutely insane introduction. He cheerfully welcomes Soda to the elite squad. Shivering, our boy agrees. Definitely not the chill vibe he imagined. Kakeru smirks, roasting their overflowing aggressive energy. Duty calls. A sinister red portal materialized downtown. Soda, Kakeru, and Karen cautiously patrolled the streets. They swept the dead silent neighborhood, hyper-focused on every shadowy corner, rooftop, and alleyway. They needed absolute confirmation this was the exact drop zone for the Nightmare Gate. The mundane street felt unnervingly, terrifyingly quiet. Karen groans, aggressively scratching her head. She openly confesses her terrible sense of suburban direction. To her, every single house was a total copy-paste nightmare. Identical roofs, boring windows, cloned fences. She would literally wander blindly in minutes. Kakeru simply chuckled, noting their clutch early arrival. If they lagged and those shadow beasts breached the portal, the civilian bloodbath would be catastrophic. Nobody wanted that heavy karma. Karen aggressively nodded, sweating profusely. Our main character curiously asks if the boss survived the last brutal invasion. Kakeru confirms it. Cruising down the block, Soda randomly drops Ichigo Kotora's name into the chat. He casually mentions Kotora got drafted by the notorious Heavenly Wolf group. Their expressions instantly darkened. The captain reveals Squad 7's leader leaked that intel. Karen exhales a heavy, grim sigh, murmuring deep pity for the guy. Surviving in that toxic squad was definitely no flex. Soda froze, entirely clueless. He bluntly demands to know the dark truth behind Squad 7. Before anyone could breathe a word, Kakeru raised his hand. The very atmosphere warped right before their eyes. Space itself ripped apart as a towering red gate materialized. It loomed silently between the neighborhood homes, pulsating with a sinister, blood-red aura. But they weren't alone. A rival squad was already camped out at the entrance. Suda just tilted his head, totally clueless about the underlying turf war. Kakeru smoothly broke it down. While the association dispatched them, panicked locals had likely begged this other crew for help. Desperate civilians always dial the closest hunters first. Suddenly, a scrawny dude puffing on a cigarette stepped out from the shadows. He smirked, introducing himself as Masatoshi Nishina, Team Orion's captain. Kakeru bowed politely, dropping his title as Heavenly Wolf Squad 1's leader. Orion's reaction was instant. Jaws dropped across the rival squad. Frantic whispers broke out that legendary name carried serious weight. Everyone flinched except Nishina. His face remained totally deadpan. Kakeru began outlining their official association orders to secure the portal, but Nishina brutally cut him off, barking at them to get lost. Karen's glare turned icy instantly. She snapped back, flexing their direct summons from the higher-ups. Why should they back down? Nishina coolly confirmed Kakeru's theory. The neighborhood called Team Orion first, making it their turf. Hunter Rulebook 101. In overlapping missions, first arrivals claim absolute priority. Zero exceptions. Kakeru nodded, fully accepting the harsh reality. Still, retreating from a direct association assignment would totally trash their reputation. Despite the tension, his voice stayed perfectly polite. He humbly proposed a joint raid to conquer the dungeon together. Nishina sneered, mocking elite guilds for kissing up to the association. Surprisingly, he agreed, but dropped one massive catch. Heavenly Wolf must become their absolute subordinates inside. Keikaru accepted instantly. Karen shot Keikaru a furious look of pure shock. Why surrender? Yet Keikaru stood completely unfazed, bowing his head to dodge useless bloodshed and secure the mission. That was a ridiculously cheap price, he reasoned. Karen swallowed her rage. Watching this unfold, it hits. A chilling silence washed over everyone as the two squads crossed the Red Gate's threshold. Deep down, our main character's instinct screamed this was a massive trap. The Team Orion guys openly mocked Kakaru. In their arrogant eyes, his quiet humility screamed absolute weakness. Nishina even threw shade, joking how a fragile-looking pretty boy somehow snagged the captain's seat of an elite squad. Bagging this catacomb clear with Keikaru tagging along would totally flex their resume. Nishina's ego was already plotting using Heavenly Wolf as personal meat shields here, would heavily boost their street cred. But the second their boots hit the catacomb floor, the vibe violently shifted. The oxygen thickened, shadows swallowed the light, and bam, a lethal ambush. Dozens of hulking, heavily armored Death Knights materialized from the darkness, gripping bloodthirsty weapons. Team Orion instantly paralyzed. Even big talker Nishina looked totally terrified, his massive ego shattering into pieces, realizing the insane power gap. His squad panicked, begging for orders, but Nishina choked on his own absolute dread. From the backline, Soda ignited his burning eyes. Golden fire danced in his pupils, dissecting the mob's terrifying combat levels. These weren't your everyday dungeon trash, they were absolute juggernauts. Soda instantly calculated Team Orion was about to get totally wiped out. Keikaru calmly echoed that grim reality. Mankind's intel on these catacombs was practically zero. Sure, Red Gates were famously lethal death traps, but that was based on rookie data. If monsters boasting this raw power were just the welcoming committee, this gate was an entirely undiscovered nightmare. Suddenly, a phantom knight locked onto a Team Orion rookie. The guy just blue-screened, pure, unfiltered panic cementing his boots to the stone floor. Karen watched in pure disgust. They were barking like absolute top dogs a minute ago, and now they were crumbling like wet paper. Soda didn't even blink. He exploded off the ground, blazing mana erupting from his knuckles, and hammered a fiery right hook into the beast, halting its massive blade literally millimeters from the frozen kid's face. That one god-tier flex instantly painted a giant glowing target on his back. Soda casually checked the trembling rookie, while Karen visibly cringed at his reckless hero complex. Kakeru noted that Soda's body reacted on pure combat instinct. His ultimate grind was to become the absolute apex conqueror, swearing an oath to never let a single life slip away. Karen was stunned. It sounded totally delusional, an impossible anime-level pipe dream. But Soda wasn't just capping. He roared, launching a savage blitz right into the teeth of the demonic knight vanguard. His raw resolve struck a nerve deep inside both Keikaru and Karen. The captain suddenly shot a piercing look at her, questioning her actual endgame. As Soda danced through the battlefield, weaving past lethal strikes to deal explosive fire combos, a dormant spark ignited in Karen's soul. Was her whole personality just about flexing on rivals? What was her absolute true drive? Chasing clout on the leaderboards? Team Orion scrambled desperately to survive the bloodbath. Suddenly, a repressed trauma slammed into Karen. A cold, breathless body, a childhood ghost she wasn't strong enough to protect. The suffocating memory of standing there, completely useless. That exact despair forced her conqueror awakening. She chased power not for hype or likes, but to never taste that agonizing helplessness again. White-hot fury flooded her veins. She was absolutely pissed at herself for forgetting. The second a Shadow Knight flanked Soda for a cheap kill, Karen teleported into action. A jagged earth spike violently erupted from the dungeon floor. Her mana crashed down like a meteor, slamming the armored freak with devastating kinetic force before it registered the threat. Soda glanced back in shock. Karen squeezed her fists until her knuckles turned white. Nobody was dying on her watch. Absolutely 0% chance. She boiled with rage, trading her core identity just to climb ridiculous power rankings. Keikaru flashed a subtle, knowing smirk, watching his two aces throw down with absolute murder in their eyes. His squad finally radiated main character energy, locked in, and ready to massacre whatever boss lurked deep inside this red gate. But right now, they were boxed in, suffocating in a 360-degree kill box of berserk, heavy metal executioners. Yet, facing an impossible wave, Soda and Karen refused to yield a single inch. Karen takes the initiative. Without skipping a beat, she channels her aura into the bedrock and triggers Rage of Gaia. The terrain violently shatters as colossal stone javelins blast out from the earth. Following up, she chains it into Piercing Strike. The earth missiles collide dead-on with the aggro mob, For a microsecond, it seems like a win. But then, a brutal reality check, the rock doesn't even dent their armor. It barely chips their health bars. The death squad just tanks the hit, bulldozing through the heavy debris like it's literal dust. Soda doesn't let the panic settle. He fronts up, redlining his mana pool to rapid-fire stun, desperately trying to crowd control the relentless mob. Without breathing, he combos straight into Blaze. A tsunami of wildfire sweeps the zone, cranking the temperature high enough to vaporize titanium. He goes completely all out, dropping a max stat Hellfire that devours a cluster of knights in a pure, raging inferno. But as the smoke dissipates, the terrifying silhouettes are still standing. Their armor is scorched pitch black, but their health bars haven't dropped. Their defense stats are absolutely broken. A cold sweat hits Soda and Karen. Sure, a critical Hellfire might melt a solo target, but doing area of effect damage to this insane swarm? Flat out impossible. If Soda keeps spamming high-tier skills like a total maniac, his mana bar will hit absolute zero way before they clear this wave. As the relentless march continues, Soda squints through the blinding chaos, scanning the enemy backline. And then, his blood runs ice cold. Lurking behind the grunt squad is an absolute unit of a knight, towering like a literal raid boss. It hasn't even drawn its weapon, but its terrifying aura is so suffocating, it feels like gravity itself just tripled. That one is built entirely differently. Karen locks eyes with it and instantly realizes that is the boss. Its menacing presence simply demands your attention. Karen desperately yells at Soda to funnel absolutely all their power into that single target, zero hesitation. Snipping the head off the snake might shatter the enemy's entire formation. Together, they channel their raw energy for one devastating ultimate strike. Endless stake, Blaze. They siphon every drop of surrounding mana, compressing it into a violently dense core, gambling their lives on this absolute bullseye. Just a heartbeat before they unleash hell, the armored boss deliberately raises its massive blade. Instantly, heavily armored grunts swarm the front line, interlocking their gear to construct an impenetrable, perfectly synchronized barricade. Their dual blast violently detonates against the barricade. The deafening shockwave completely shreds the cavern, yet the commander behind them remains absolutely flawless. The commander thrusts its weapon forward, a silent battle command. The terrifyingly disciplined infantry instantly surges ahead as a single, unstoppable tidal wave. A chilling realization hits them. These are not mindless beasts. This is a highly strategic military force executing flawless commands, breathing as a single entity. This isn't a random mob, it is a literal army. Meanwhile, a terrified Nishina cowers in the shadows. Paralyzed by the unfolding massacre, he frantically whispers to himself, desperately questioning why Heavenly Wolf hasn't completely bailed out, while survival is still possible. He totally misses Keikaru looming right behind his shoulder. Keikaru coldly states they stand their ground because they grasp the brutal consequences of fleeing. Two of Nishina's own squad members scream at him, absolute terror warping their pale faces. They beg him to fall back, radio for reinforcements, and abandon Heavenly Wolf to die. Nishina freezes in dead silence. Slowly, he shakes his head. If they cowered out now, what horrific nightmare follows? If this monstrous legion breaches the perimeter, the victims won't be strangers. It will absolutely obliterate their hometown, their sanctuaries, and their loved ones. That horrific image shatters his hesitation. Snapping fully upright, he fiercely roars that securing a flawless victory isn't the damn objective today. They simply must endure and fiercely defend this territory. That is enough. Ignited by his words, Team Orion immediately surges forward with zero doubt. They sprint forward, desperately throwing themselves between the monstrous enemy legion and Heavenly Wolf. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Soda and Karen, they violently clash against the armored brigade. Heavy steel ruthlessly gouges iron, sending blinding sparks everywhere. Magic violently detonates everywhere, fracturing the earth and suffocating the air with blistering heat and massive shockwaves. Keikaru analyzes the chaos from afar, realizing their desperate stand falls short. These armored elites are simply too overwhelmingly powerful. Their numbers are suffocating, and the commander watches flawlessly from the rear. Suddenly, Karen gasps, the entire atmosphere violently shifts. The captain is charging a catastrophic move. The very bedrock forcefully quakes beneath them, while an intensely suffocating gravity dominates the war zone. Keikaru unleashes his monstrous aura, and it's breathtaking. The sheer terror is impossible to ignore, even blindly. Karen's body instinctively reacts, mysteriously dragged into absolute resonance with his vibe. Their magical frequencies seamlessly intertwine together. The earth forcefully ruptures upward. Keikaru manipulates their synchronized mana to instantly elevate the entire vanguard out of harm's way. Both squads are magically hoisted into the sky, anchoring themselves onto Karen's massive floating construct. A wildly confused Soda begs for an explanation. She reveals the captain hijacked her ability for an emergency reposition. Suddenly, a colossal, glowing palm forged purely from raw aura materializes above. It dramatically manifests giant killing. The armored legion freezes in sheer panic before the gargantuan fist launches forward in one devastatingly ruthless haymaker. Just the wind pressure violently ragdolls the elite infantry everywhere. Shattered bodies forcefully scatter across the chaotic wasteland. They are pathetically powerless against this godlike momentum. Karen realizes this isn't a single target strike, it is an absolute lane-clearing nuke. Obliterating the grunts and violently carving a direct trench toward the commander, the gargantuan punch absolutely refuses to slow down. Channeling unfathomable momentum, that one apocalyptic strike carries a suffocating density, easily capable of flattening an entire military battalion. It packs enough heat to challenge the Grandmaster. Karen and Sota are totally awestruck. This is their leader's true dominance. The catastrophic fist squarely annihilates the boss. The apocalyptic collision echoes violently throughout the ancient dungeon, leaving everyone's eardrums bleeding. However, launching that nuke completely depleted Kakeru's stamina. Cold sweat vigorously drips from his chin, while his chest violently heaves, desperately gasping to refill his burning lungs. For a fleeting moment, nostalgia hits him. He vividly recalls testing this exact art on a reinforced bunker. Back then, the resulting fracture was pathetic. Just a jagged little dent, absolutely nothing like this recent absolute devastation. Yet, his wise master had analyzed that tiny crater, looking back at him with genuine awe. He proudly praised Kakeru for successfully unlocking his innate talent. Kakeru was completely physically drained back then too, but the excruciating muscle fatigue simply didn't matter. He was overwhelmingly ecstatic to witness that warm pride on his master's face. He finally found someone who truly recognized his hidden potential. His sensei, Soda's dad, firmly gripped his shoulder, commending his hard work. His gentle tone echoed the deep warmth of a loving dad, hyping up his own kid. Snapping back to reality, deafening cheers forcefully rip him from the past. His entire squad is going absolutely wild. Sota is completely mind-blown. That technique was insanely overpowered, basically nuking an entire legion solo. Yet, Kakeru simply brushes it off like a casual Tuesday. He humbly claims his ultimate flex is just a mindless demolition art. Absolute raw output, zero fancy gimmicks, absolutely no complex magic, just pure, unapologetic brute force. He admitted that compared to Karen's flashy magic or Keiichiro's flawless techniques, his own combat style felt super rigid and honestly pretty clunky. Sota froze in shock. Why was the captain casually name-dropping his dad? He instantly demanded to know if they had history. Before Kakeru could answer, Nishino's elite squad suddenly dropped into a dead-serious bow. Apologizing frantically, they confessed they had zero clue about his true identity. Captain Kakeru was actually a legendary knight of the round. He was the absolute unit known as the Fist of Destruction. Kakeru brushed it off, but Sota was buzzing with intense curiosity now. He desperately asked what these knights actually were. Karen chimed in, noting it was highly classified lore for normal people. She revealed they were literally the first official elite task force ever forged in Japan. The Player Association totally copied their blueprint to build the modern squad system. Most veterans eventually leveled up into high-tier executive roles, passing down their ultimate secrets. However, Kakeru mentioned some wild outliers. Mavericks like him joined fresh squads. Meanwhile, Sota's dad took the rogue path as a solo mercenary. Sota's jaw absolutely dropped at this. His own father rolled with his current captain? Kakeru smirked, hinting the lore ran way deeper. Sota's dad was actually his master, the exact legend who awakened his player status and threw him a lifeline. Cut to the Player Association headquarters. Inside Chairman Bando's lavish office, the tension was suffocating. Bando chilled behind his massive desk, gripping a lit cigarette as thick smoke curled into the air. Yusei and Yamato sat opposite him, aggressively debating about Sota. Knowing Keiichiro's kid had infiltrated Kakeru's squad, Bando suddenly smashed his burning cigarette into the glass ashtray with pure savage force. The vibe turned instantly hostile. He declared they would sweep the rookie's completely illegal dungeon dive under the rug. Yusei let out a relieved breath, swearing they would discipline Sota themselves. But as Yamato loudly slurped his juice box, the chairman completely lost it. "Fix that garbage attitude," he roared. Cornered, Yamato threw out a drippingly sarcastic thanks. Yusei frantically bowed to do immediate damage control, swearing he and Kakeru would fix this mess. Unfazed, Yamato casually pointed out that since Sota's dad was their legendary brother-in-arms, covering for his kid was a total no-brainer. He warned the boss to stop acting like Sota owed him blood. Bando exploded. He barked that, as the absolute boss, he could not bend the rules for nostalgic feelings. But suddenly, his fierce glare softened. He noticed a terrifying shift in Yamato. His confident posture, his ice-cold tone, it was all evolving. Yamato was morphing into his spitting image. The chairman warned that Heavenly Wolf was hoarding dangerously massive influence, and flexing that kind of raw power invited massive targets on their backs. Haters were already actively plotting to drag him down. Yamato smirked, totally owning his toxic arrogance, but his eyes darkened as he claimed. He carried the crushing weight of his god-tier strength. His voice dropped to a lethally cold whisper. He questioned his own sanity daily. Suddenly, his terrifying aura erupted. Crackling blue lightning violently surged, flooding the claustrophobic room with pure dread. He snarled that he had zero patience for pathetic, lazy cowards. The whining of backseat gamers meant absolutely nothing to him. His crackling energy perfectly sparked the chairman's unlit cigarette. "Got a problem? Say it to my face," Yamato challenged. The chairman took a slow, heavy drag. That toxic smoke triggered a heavy memory. Back when they first crossed paths, Yamato had scoffed, claiming their shared orphanage trauma basically made them share a single brain cell. Bando's mind flashed back. He vividly remembered blasting a young Keikaru in the jaw, screaming that the bloody battlefield was no playground for edgy kids. The brutal strike grounded Keikaru. Bando kept roaring, playing the savage dad trying to beat brutal reality into a reckless punk. But Keikaru spat blood and fired right back. He swore on his life he would awaken as a player, telling Bando to shut his mouth and just draft him. Before fists flew again, Keiichiro totally blocked the violence. He backed the stubborn kid, respecting his fiery resolve. Offering a sturdy hand, he pulled Kakeru from the dirt, checking on him. "I am Sasaki Keiichiro," the legend smiled, asking for the rookie's name. Kakeru just stared, completely stunned. This warrior felt galaxies apart from Bando's toxic rage. His aura radiated pure, comforting light. Grabbing that hand changed Keikaru's destiny forever. Snapping back to the deadly catacombs, Kakeru dropped the ultimate lore. He, Yamato, Yusei, and Toma were all trauma-bonded orphanage survivors. Living in absolute poverty, he took the heavy burden as the oldest brother. He was absolutely desperate to grind for survival cash. And the guardian angel who pulled him from the gutter? Soda's very own father. Soda's eyes totally lit up. An unbreakable thread of fate actually linked him to his badass captain through his dad. He opened his mouth to beg for more lore, when a blinding, catastrophic white flash nuked the room. Total paralysis. A sinister portal ripped open right before their eyes deep within the catacomb. A dungeon spawning inside another dungeon. Was such a glitch even mathematically possible? This completely shattered the system rules. The entire squad stood absolutely paralyzed, their minds blue-screening at the impossible anomaly. Karen and Soda remained totally frozen, their jaws practically hitting the floor. Soda desperately glanced at his captain, praying for some logical explanation. He desperately needed answers to process this madness. However, Keikaru simply glared at the swirling vortex in dead silence, his face darkening with intense gravity. His gaze felt a million miles away. That haunted look proved this nightmare was not a first for him. A chilling flashback suddenly invaded his thoughts, the exact moment he witnessed a double dungeon manifest for the very first time. Back in those days, he stood shoulder to shoulder with Keiichiro. Both were completely clueless about the horrors lurking beyond that threshold. Was a terrifying boss monster waiting, or perhaps an unimaginable catastrophic threat? Yet they foolishly charged forward without a single second of hesitation. Predictably, that suicidal dive instantly spiraled into absolute chaos. The following horrific memory flashing through Kakeru's brain showcased Keiichiro, violently slammed into the dirt, absolutely drenched in crimson, desperately clinging to life. That gruesome nightmare remained permanently branded into his soul. Watching his brutally mangled comrade, still violently struggling to his feet, was pure agony. Karen's anxious shout abruptly yanked him back to reality, but Keikaru's resolve was already ironclad. He declared a solo suicide mission into the portal. He ordered his rookies to instantly signal for emergency backup. Both subordinates gaped at him, completely shell-shocked. Their overpowered captain actually requesting cavalry? That singular fact proved just how apocalyptic this threat truly was. Kakeru stated with ice-cold conviction that this anomaly broke every known rule. Since the system was glitching, treating this like a typical raid meant certain death. They frantically required top-tier hunter reinforcements immediately. Karen fiercely stepped up, physically barricading his path forward. Her voice slightly trembled, but fierce determination blazed within her unwavering glare. She boldly reminded him of her elite status as the first squad's vice captain. Running away like a coward was not an option. The 6 hunters held their ground before the abyss. She furiously declared she was not some helpless rookie anymore. She demanded to throw down alongside him as an equal combatant, totally refusing bench-warming duty. The captain's intense gaze shifted toward Soda, gulping down his rising panic. Soda bravely volunteered for the vanguard. Kakeru's jaw immediately clenched in frustration. He instantly vetoed the idea. Subjecting another rookie to his past traumatic horrors was completely unacceptable. Sota looked totally baffled by the harsh rejection. Right on cue, Nishina and his squad confidently stepped into the spotlight. He bravely volunteered his crew for the crucial emergency runner duty. He bluntly confessed that matching up against Keikaru's elite unit, their power levels were basically useless inside a chaotic, glitching dungeon. They would just end up as dead weight. Meanwhile, these two rookies possessed undeniable brute strength. Furthermore, shielding your squad matters immensely. However, placing absolute faith in their potential is mandatory for an awakening. Kakaru silently chewed on those profound words for a brief second. Finally, he yielded. He commanded Nishina's crew to urgently speed dial the Hunter Association and demand heavy-hitting reinforcements. Both rookies exhaled massive sighs of relief after dodging bench duty. Right before peeling out, Nishina locked eyes with Sota and dropped a deeply genuine thank you for rescuing his comrade. Our main character's face flushed crimson, completely awkward at handling straight-up praise. They locked hands in a solid, respectful grip. The Vanguard trio silently observed Team Orion hauling out of the underground maze. Sota threw a casual peace sign. Suddenly, a mysterious whisper echoed. That familiar floating fireball materialized right beside him, hovering like a loyal pet. Sota practically jumped out of his skin despite his daily exposure to the spirit. The entity ominously warned that the upcoming battle would flip their entire reality. A massive fate-altering crossroad was rapidly approaching. Yet the magical entity's voice crackled with severe static interference, mimicking a totally trashed radio signal. Most phrases shattered into cryptic gibberish. However, one terrifying directive pierced through the noise perfectly. He absolutely had to solo this raid. Sota violently snapped awake when his comrade shouted his name. Shaking off the daze, he locked his game face on. Whatever monstrous threat lurked beyond that portal, they were jumping in head first. He quickly shouted an apology and rushed forward to regroup. He glanced back at the fiery spirit, confidently whispering to chill out. He was not flying solo. He possessed wildly overpowered, totally dependable guildmates. Sota finally sprinted straight into the abyssal vortex. A final, chilling omen echoed behind him. Whatever earth-shattering reality awaited inside the boss room, a single misstep would guarantee total annihilation. Cut back to Nishina's squad, who had successfully breached the dungeon's exterior perimeter. They instantly began strategizing the fastest method to ping the Hunter Association for emergency cavalry. Midway through their sentence, tragedy struck. Lethal, unseen blades violently shredded their armor. Zero audio cues, absolutely zero visual warnings, just catastrophic gashes spontaneously erupting across their flesh. Gallons of crimson painted the concrete as the duo heavily crashed down. Nishina instantly turned to solid ice. His brain hopelessly glitched, trying to process the sudden massacre. The ambush was unimaginably fast. A sinister figure materialized in their blind spot, coldly ordering them to back away from the portal. The aura radiating from him felt entirely suffocating, exuding a demonic, unnatural evil that screamed non-human. Pure, unadulterated rage erupted deep within Nishina's core. He furiously roared, demanding to know who this arrogant villain actually was. The mysterious psycho merely smirked, mocking that dead men did not need names, calling him basic monster bait. That disrespectful trash talk ignited Nishina's fury. He instantly awakened his alter ego ability, fully locking into combat mode, yet his survival instincts were already screaming. This foe was built entirely different, casting massive, unseen slash waves across the entire zone. Should demand insane cast time. Refusing to wait, his knuckles sparked neon green, launching forward, zigzagging frantically to shrink the gap. Yet the target stood dead still. Nishino never arrived. Phantom blades shredded him from all angles before a single strike landed. Pure agony erupted. Crimson sprayed exactly like his fallen squad. The dude had not twitched, that was pure nightmare fuel. Crashing to his knees, Nishino stared up at the looming shadow. Monster was the only valid label. The freak casually nudged the bleeding bodies back toward the dark dungeon entrance, like returning simple objects, tossing them as sacrifices. Nishino just watched, paralyzed by crushing regret. He completely failed his squad. The boss smirked, mocking how they would make excellent compost. Their soaked, lifeless forms painted the floor, while the villain walked off, zero glances back. Entering the gate, an eerie, dead silence swallowed them. It was not just quiet, it felt suffocating. Zero hostiles, zero movement, just their own echoing steps. Karen instantly called out the weird vibes. The domain was way too dead. The captain nodded, demanding they keep their shields up. He stepped up to scout the perimeter, sweeping every dark alley. He ordered them to stay locked in and watch every single shadow. But Karen could not shake that heavy dread sinking in her chest. The whole zone screamed bad news, like invisible eyes tracking them. She snapped Soda's name, catching him completely zoning out again. He totally owned up to being severely sidetracked right now. Karen scowled. The room was literally empty. What could possibly hijack his attention? Soda paused briefly. Actually, there was something huge. He had been secretly channeling his flaming eyes this whole time, and his vision was not empty at all. Countless restless spirits were aimlessly roaming the entire dungeon. Dropping that lore bomb made Karen instantly freeze. This entire domain was swarming with phantoms, the whole freaking time. Soda honestly was not sure if ghosts and souls were the exact same, but the vibes matched. Karen nervously asked if he had ever witnessed anything like this. Soda nodded, spotting spirits around campus and town previously. But never this insane. The sheer numbers were wild. Usually, the ghosts appeared clearly human, just totally transparent, like normal people. But this specific time, the massive ghost crowd felt crazy, overwhelming. Soda sensed a deeper meaning, locking eyes with one staring spirit. Acting on pure instinct, Soda said, "What is up?" Karen flinched hard, totally assuming he was addressing her. Our main character quickly clarified he meant the ghost. The spirit looked absolutely shook being perceived, instantly apologizing, and nervously dropped his name, Utsugi. Calming down, his glitchy, blurred form finally locked into focus, revealing a clear human face. Utsugi confessed he tagged along after eavesdropping on Soda's fierce debate with the captain. Earlier, Soda jogged his memory. Right, that exact moment their leader tried shielding them from the heat. Flashbacks hit. Captain Keikaru ordering them to ping backup while he solo tanked the impending threat. Utsugi shared a parallel tragic backstory. While his squad raided these exact catacombs, they triggered a fatal encounter. His crew demanded he retreat for reinforcements, forcing a brutal split. He bolted solo while the gang held the line, but the cavalry spawned way too late, and his entire party got wiped. Even if he was pure deadweight, he desperately wished he had stayed. Reliving that trauma shattered him completely. Ditching them was his ultimate regret. If he just possessed Soda's guts, maybe the timeline would have changed. As Utsugi poured his heart out, Soda played live translator for Karen to catch the lore. Karen's face totally softened, asking with genuine warmth if they could launch any rescue mission for his soul. Soda blinked, stunned. Karen suggested helping him cross over, finding a way to grant him true peace. Soda could not hide a proud grin. Despite Utsugi being a ghost, Karen refused to leave him trapped in this cursed lobby. Soda then boldly asked Utsugi for his ultimate dying regret. Utsugi had massive baggage, but his top pick? He desperately craved an audience to witness his true skill popping off. He wanted to flex it in a legitimate boss fight just once. Soda immediately asked for the skill's name. "I Link," Utsugi declared. Soda quickly broke down the mechanics to Karen, explaining it literally screen shares your vision with the party. Karen realized it was a top-tier scouting ability, more about team synergy than raw damage. Suddenly, Karen caught Soda mumbling to himself again, and snapped at him to cut the confusing weirdo act. Soda sheepishly apologized, his eyes shining as he hyped up how insanely broken that skill truly was. Karen and Utsugi just blinked, completely stunned. Broken? Seriously? Soda flashed a knowing smirk, ready to drop some knowledge, but the camera suddenly pans way deeper into the dungeon. Captain Keikaru squared up against a colossal iron gate, his knuckles turned white. It mirrored the exact same nightmare door from earlier, which spelled absolute disaster. A titanic, heavily armored monstrosity materialized right at his back, but Keikaru kept his cool. He fully expected a final boss. The giant beast swung its massive broadsword with terrifying speed. Keikaru barely braced for impact, but the sheer shockwave left the monster totally unfazed. He violently kicked off its armor to gain breathing room, instantly popping his signature skill, Giant Killing. A blinding azure aura erupted from his core as he unleashed a devastating rend strike. A colossal, glowing phantom hand brutally slammed the knight, yet the titan barely flinched. His heavy-hitting ultimate basically did zero damage. Keikaru grit his teeth. This absolute unit was light years beyond the trash mobs they just wiped out. He spammed a furious combo, targeting blind spots, but nothing pierced its defenses. He realized only his legendary Conquering Fist could end this nightmare, but that ultimate required insane charge time, a luxury he absolutely lacked right now. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the chaos. Soda and Karen touched down right beside him, their eyes burned with pure, battle-ready intensity. Soda boldly stepped up, claiming the vanguard. Keikaru instantly shot that down. This boss monster was way out of their league. He ordered them to strictly play support and stall for his cast time. But Soda held his ground, radiating absolute confidence that they had this. He boldly declared this beast was their prey. The dynamic duo locked eyes with the towering iron juggernaut. Its killing intent was suffocating, but zero fear showed in their eyes. They were starving to prove their worth, promising to fold this boss in 60 seconds. Keikaru wasn't buying it for a second. He called it pure suicide. This behemoth was insanely tankier than the previous boss they barely survived. They literally needed him to hard carry and secure those last kills. So how could two rookies possibly solo this absolute menace? The Titan slowly raised its massive blade, shifting into a deadly execution stance. Soda's voice dropped, dropping the jokes. He acknowledged Kakeru always played the hero, endlessly tanking the deadliest hits to keep them safe. But if they spent their whole lives cowering behind his shield, they would remain weak forever. His tone was dead serious, unwavering. Even the energy rolling off him felt transformed. Heavy, refined, screaming pure main character energy, as he finally embraced the heat of a life-or-death battle. Surpassing his limits was his ultimate obsession since day one. Hearing this, Kakeru stopped dead in his tracks. That raw desperation felt painfully nostalgic. A ghost of a memory hit him his younger self, aggressively demanding his old master for power, screaming how much he loathed being a helpless burden. Right then, Karen softly but stubbornly backed Soda up. They weren't just acting reckless for fun. They desperately needed this absolute victory to prove their evolution, both to their veteran leader and their own souls. They passionately pleaded for permission to take the reins. That fierce resolve genuinely rattled him. Yielding to their fiery spirits, he finally sighed and gave the green light, warning them to bail if it turned lethal, but they instantly cut him off with loud, hyped-up thanks. Kakeru stood frozen, swallowed by a bittersweet wave of nostalgia. Without missing a beat, Karen screamed the attack order, and Soda exploded forward like a literal missile, blazing with fire. Watching them fearlessly charge, Kakeru flashed a proud, brotherly grin, but that warm smile quickly cracked. He loved witnessing this epic glow-up, yet deep down, he felt agonizingly unworthy of this joy. The pride of watching a successor ascend that was the exact happiness he brutally stole from his late master, Kiichiro. Back in the chaos, the battleground tension was thick enough to cut. Karen crouched low, slamming her palm directly into the dirt. Magic pulsed from her touch. A blinding, neon-pink aura spider-webbed across the rocky terrain, illuminating the dead earth like shattered neon glass. A massive earthquake hit. Gigantic stone pillars violently ripped through the bedrock, shooting up toward the cavern ceiling, completely bending nature to her absolute will. Soda didn't waste a microsecond. He instantly vaulted off the newly forged rock formations. Moving like a blur, he parkoured across the floating debris, turning each boulder into a launch pad to build insane aerial momentum. Right in the monster's blind spot, the earth warped again. A monstrous fist sculpted from pure, jagged bedrock materialized, clenching tight before delivering a god-tier haymaker. The brutal sneak attack smashed squarely into the knight's spine, sending a deafening shockwave through the dungeon. The colossal boss was launched helplessly into midair, its flawless defense completely shattered, and catapulted straight into Soda's kill zone. Roaring infernos swallowed the boy's right arm as he cocked back his fist. The fiery aura blazed hotter than ever. The second the boss entered his crosshairs, Soda unleashed a devastating, meteor-like fiery smash. Channeling every ounce of his power, he pulverized the enemy straight into the dirt. The sheer kinetic force completely shattered the stone arena beneath them. Watching from the sidelines, Kakeru analyzed the battlefield. Their synergy was absolutely flawless. Zero hesitation, just pure, perfectly synced devastation. Yet, his instincts screamed that something was off. These strikes hit like a truck, sure, but they lacked that fatal finishing blow. The monstrosity slowly dragged itself out of the rubble. Its scorched armor was battered, but the beast refused to fall. Karen instantly made her move. Slamming her palm into the earth, massive stone pillars erupted, wrapping around the monster's legs like unbreakable bedrock chains. The earth clamped down hard, completely paralyzing the beast in its tracks. Suda, her voice sliced through the chaos. As the creature glanced up, Suda materialized right in its face, a blazing inferno of aura erupting around his entire body. Simultaneously, Karen conjured colossal fists made of solid rock right behind their target. Trapped in a pincer attack, the monster could only brace for impact. Suda unleashed a relentless barrage from the front, raining down explosive, fire-laced hooks that melted straight through the beast's heavy plating. As Karen's earthen fists pulverized its back, the armored titan unleashed a blood-curdling roar, violently ripping its legs free and obliterating the stone restraints. Shrapnel exploded in every direction as the behemoth stabilized its battle stance. Not wasting a single heartbeat, the beast hoisted its greatsword, unleashing a devastating, wide arc slash aimed right at Suda's neck. Just before steel met flesh, a colossal earthen rampart violently erupted from the ground. Karen's split-second reflexes manifested a fortress wall, tanking the lethal blow. Suda backflipped to safety, gasping for air but keeping his laser focus. Kakeru's eyes widened. Their combat rhythm wasn't just solid, it was absolute perfection. Panic was non-existent. Their battle IQ was off the charts. Suda instantly recognized the attack pattern. It was a carbon copy of the previous grunts. Mid-assault, Suda's eyes ignited with a fierce, calculating intensity through the roaring fire. He was completely dissecting his opponent's every move. He downloaded its entire moveset, from the subtle weight shifts right before a heavy swing, to how its metallic shell dispersed kinetic energy. And then, bingo, buried deep beneath those impenetrable layers of defense, a minuscule, flickering vulnerability in its very soul exposed itself. A faint, pulsating light throbbed right at the center of its chest, exactly where a human heart would beat. But the moment he locked onto it, the core suddenly drifted. This critical weakness wasn't stationary, it was actively roaming. Gotta make this count, Suda growled. Out of nowhere, a lethal bedrock stalagmite violently impaled the creature from behind, completely skewering its armored shoulder. The brutal impact literally ripped its entire arm from the socket, sending the heavy metal limb crashing into the dirt. Karen realized Suda had already pinpointed the exact target. Standing a few yards away, she kept one palm firmly planted on the trembling earth. Her aura was chillingly calm, radiating an effortless energy as if this high-stakes battle was just a walk in the park. All thanks to Utsugi's eye link, Suda's exact field of vision was directly wired into her brain. That elusive weak point was now glowing like a beacon. Suda held his ground like a coiled spring, an inferno raging around his silhouette as he waited for the opening. Karen initiated the combo. Channeling her mana into the soil, debris from the decimated arena defied gravity. She always played it off like she was just an innocent maiden. But naturally, she was setting the ultimate stage for the hero. A vicious sandstorm engulfed the night, blinding its sensors and completely destroying its footing. The panic-stricken juggernaut started swinging wildly into the void, completely neutralized by the suffocating smokescreen of dust. Tearing straight through the chaos, Suda blitzed forward. His blazing aura exploded, manifesting as an impenetrable armor of pure fire. Closing the gap in a flash, he unleashed a soul-shaking battle cry, Spirit Roar, and launched a devastating right hook straight ahead. His blazing fist drilled directly into the beast's chest, obliterating that shifting weak point in one epic strike. Time literally froze. A beat of dead silence dropped, before volatile flames violently erupted from inside the knight's armor as massive fissures webbed across its hull. Incinerated entirely from the inside out, the towering titan staggered aimlessly, its structural integrity completely giving way. The dust finally cleared as the scorched husk collapsed into a heap of scrap. This absolute massacre had lasted barely 60 seconds, yet the sheer intensity made it feel like an eternity. Watching from afar, Utsugi's jaw hit the floor at the flawless, rapid-fire execution. Panting heavily, Suda turned back with a legendary, confident grin. "You actually did it," he smirked, holding out his fist for a well-deserved bump. Without that clutch support skill, they would have been toast. Tears pricked Utsugi's eyes as he stepped up, fiercely returning the fist bump. For the absolute first time, his power had literally turned the tides of war. Suddenly, a familiar holographic blue window materialized mid-air. Pulsing with an ethereal glow, the system notification dropped a massive truth bomb. Utsugi Nozomi's lingering regret has finally been resolved. Clear condition met, ability activated in live combat. Then, another game-changing prompt flashed on screen. Skill successfully inherited. Eye link. System effect. Grants the power to perfectly sync vision with allies. A soft chuckle escaped Utsugi, a heavy burden visibly lifting from his shoulders. He instantly hit Suda with overwhelming gratitude, admitting this redemption arc was totally impossible without his frontline backup. Turning to Captain Kakeru and Karen, he poured out his thanks to the squad. But the second the skill locked in, reality shifted. He fully materialized. They weren't just sensing his aura anymore. He was physically standing right there. Kakeru blinked in sheer disbelief, while Karen simply stared, breathing out a stunned, "Oh." Karen confessed that when the concept of Island first dropped, she totally doubted its actual combat potential. The theory sounded great, but practical application? A totally different beast. Luckily, Utsugi had been her anchor through the chaos. His absolute chill and crystal-clear instructions kept her lethal on the battlefield, earning her deepest, most genuine gratitude. Flashing a gentle, bittersweet smile, Utsugi whispered that he was just grateful for this one final reunion. Our main character felt the warmth too, but the vibe shifted instantly as a dark shadow crossed his face. He dropped a heavy warning. The moment he crossed that earlier threshold, a terrifying, gut-wrenching dread had locked onto him. The squad was utterly baffled, but Utsugi pushed on, confessing a creeping fear that his very identity was slowly dissolving. Linger here too long, and he would mutate into one of those mindless, drifting phantoms. And those entities were terrifyingly different. They were hollow, drained of their core essence. With a final plea for them to stay sharp, his time ran out. No epic explosion, no grand finale. His spirit silently dissolved into thin air, leaving the trio frozen in heavy silence. "What does losing your entire identity even mean?" Soda muttered into the void. Did that explain their missing fireball companion? Were the two connected? Exhaling a tense breath, Karen grumbled that Utsugi really did not need to drop such nightmare fuel. Shooting Soda a calculating side-eye, she challenged him, asking if he was about to fold and sprint for the exit. Soda shut that down instantly. Not a chance. The brief tension broke into a fleeting, much-needed chuckle. It was half joking, half survival coping. Snapping back to reality, Karen alerted Captain Keikaru that they needed to push forward. Loitering was a death sentence, and these ancient catacombs held zero mercy. Looming massively ahead of them was a colossal golden door. Without missing a single beat, Keikaru marched up, planted his palms against the metal, and shoved. The heavy iron groaned violently open. The interior was mind-blowing. A sprawling, opulent chamber where absolutely everything radiated pure gold, from the ground up to the towering pillars. Blazing wall sconces threw wild, dancing shadows off the polished architecture, transforming the cavern into an unearthly, gilded royal court. Before the duo could even process the flex, Kakaru whispered something chilling. This massive arena felt terrifyingly nostalgic. Suddenly, Karen thrust her finger forward, her voice cracking as she screamed. Cold sweat instantly erupted across the captain's face. Dominating the dead center of the sanctuary was an absolute monolith, a gargantuan, otherworldly egg. Its pitch-black shell was violently scarred with veins of corrupted purple and gold. It lacked any holy glow, yet it radiated an overwhelmingly toxic aura that practically suffocated the room. Panicking, Karen instantly whipped her head toward Soda. "Do you know what that thing is?" she demanded. But the second her eyes locked onto his, her blood ran cold. Soda was paralyzed, his face completely drained of color. He stopped breathing entirely, staring at the ghostly sentinel guarding the artifact. And that phantom was a dead ringer for Captain Kakaru. Strike that. It was not a clone. It was literally the captain's spirit. Soda let out a blood-curdling scream of pure disbelief. Flashback time. Yamato was chilling, dropping lore on Chairman Ryunosuke Bando. The deadpan chairman pressed him hard. Could a living, breathing human actually encounter their own detached soul wandering the earth? Tearing into a fresh candy bar, Yamato casually nodded. He confirmed it was 100% a reality. He had crossed paths with Goten, the second squad's vice captain. He was absolutely certain. Soda even bumped into Goten's phantom underground and fully assumed the guy was dead. They later verified the absolute identical match. Sipping his brew, the chairman logically argued doppelgangers existed. Yamato flashed a massive rejection cross with his hands. Not a chance. Even the combat techniques that Spirit unleashed were pixel-perfect replicas. That curveball utterly scrambled the chairman's brain. Smirking, Yamato roasted the old man for lacking creative vision, instantly sparking his temper. Yusei delivered a swift warning jab to Yamato's ribs to cut the comedy. Judging by his confident swagger, Yamato was cooking up a wild hypothesis. Snapping off another piece of chocolate, he laid it out. During a brief window, Su, his pet name for Soda, had actually conversed with Goten's ghost. The phantom's lore aligned flawlessly with the currently breathing Goten. Identical trauma, exact same core memories. Weighing a half-devoured chocolate chunk against a fully wrapped one, Yamato painted a mind-bending picture of the crisis. What if a singular existence fractured violently into two, twin entities anchored by the exact same history? Then he dropped the ultimate plot twist. What if, long before this universe even sparked to life, a mirror dimension already existed? Snapping back to the gilded nightmare, Soda was mentally short-circuiting. His flesh and blood captain was flanking him on the left, yet his captain's ethereal spirit was simultaneously guarding the beastly egg. "Soda!" Karen's desperate shriek violently shattered the silence. But before he could even pivot his neck, a blinding, agonizing eruption of pain tore through his chest. The godlike strike was completely invisible. A sickening, high-pitched tear echoed through the room, like a reaper scythe shredding through armor. Instantly, crimson sprayed violently into the air. For one agonizing microsecond, his brain completely misfired. He had not detected a single drop of killing intent in his blind spot. 0 footsteps, 0 killing intent. So how? Suda's vision blurred as gravity pulled him down. A menacing silhouette emerged from the golden pillar's shadow. It was him, the exact same monster that previously wiped out Nishida's squad. First blood, the attacker bragged. The massive slash tearing across Suda's back was terrifyingly precise. Way too precise. A crimson pool rapidly swallowed the golden floor beneath Suda's fading body. Far away, that ghostly figure, mirroring Captain Kakaru, just loomed near the massive egg. No attacks, 0 movement. It merely watched, but its twisted, bewildered expression suggested even this phantom had absolutely no clue what was unfolding. Yamato's crazy theory echoed. Were they stuck in a time loop? Suda lay completely paralyzed in his own blood. Keikaru's spirit hovered inches away, piercing right through him. No rage, no shock, just a totally empty, clueless stare. Karen sprinted toward Suda, violently slamming her knees onto the hard ground to reach him. Trembling uncontrollably, she ripped her uniform sleeve clean off. Without blinking, she shoved the makeshift bandage directly into his devastating wound. Crimson ruined the fabric instantly. Meanwhile, the ghostly Kakeru just spectated, silently observing Suda's lifeless face as his life force drained away. But then, Suda's eyes snapped open. The bloody golden floor was completely gone. The agonizing pain vanished. No blood, just an eerie, infinite void. He stared down at his own trembling hands. Zero scratches, flawless skin. Utter bewilderment washed over him as he frantically scanned this mysterious dimension. Then he sensed a presence dead ahead, Captain Kakeru, or at least an absolutely perfect clone of his commander. Identical features, matching aura. But one chilling detail stood out: a dark eye patch concealed half his face. Suda instantly sparked his combat aura. This vibe felt totally wrong. He wasn't about to drop his guard here. Was this an illusion? A deadly trap? But the mysterious figure casually read his mind and crushed that suspicion. He claimed to be the genuine Amami Kakeru, just not Suda's version. He belonged to a previous timeline. Mind blown. Previous timeline? Suda flared his ocular powers, intensely scanning the stranger's spiritual core. The absolute truth hit him like a truck. Zero deception. This genuinely was his legendary Captain Kakeru. The veteran explained reality had literally shattered and rewound. Time reset entirely, and he survived the doomed timeline before this loop. Suda's brain short-circuited. This lore drop sounded entirely impossible. A time loop? Since when? For what purpose? Absolutely nothing clicked into place. But then Kakeru dropped a massive bombshell. He revealed Suda had achieved insane power in that forgotten reality. Suda had always been the designated luggage carrier, desperately sweating to match their pace. Sure, his potential existed, but not like this. Just sensing his current aura, his massive level up was undeniably glaring. Suda cringed at the praise. He had literally just been one-shotted like a rookie. He felt utterly pathetic. Swallowing his pride, he demanded the ultimate spoiler. In that doomed timeline, did he actually bite the dust? Kakeru solemnly shook his head. Suda survived. The casualty was Kakeru himself. A brutal memory flashed through the commander's eyes. Suda bleeding out, Karen screaming in absolute panic, while past Kakeru just stood paralyzed in the background, totally useless. Epiphany struck Kakeru hard. Destiny gifted him a redo in this loop. But unlike Suda's epic growth, he remained stagnant. Meanwhile, back in reality, the villain worshipped the colossal egg, gazing at it like a literal god. He praised its divine majesty. This twisted fanatic was literally experiencing the absolute peak of his miserable existence. Crying tears of joy, he thanked his past life for guiding him. He truly believed his memories blessed their dark void. Another memory fragment triggered. Kakeru, hopelessly kneeling beside a brutalized Kaichiro inside this exact same cursed hall. Looming above them stood this exact same monster, snapping back to the present, while the villain blindly celebrated. A devastating fist violently caved his spine in. The explosive impact launched the bastard straight across the arena. He shattered the golden wall, carving massive craters into the divine architecture. Captain Kakeru had arrived. Trembling with legendary fury, his murderous intent suffocated the room for butchering his loyal subordinate. Karen froze in pure shock. Her commander radiated pure wrath, while Suda's life rapidly slipped through her fingers. Her brain totally blue-screened. Even a half-dead Suda registered the sheer, unadulterated madness of that god-tier punch. If an ordinary human tanked that catastrophic blow, they would have instantly vaporized into red mist. Phantom Kakeru shattered Suda's awe. It still wasn't enough. Suddenly, back in reality, the battle completely flipped. Kakeru violently stumbled back as a blinding slash viciously tore right through his eye. Crimson spilled instantly. Agony exploded through his skull, forcing him backward as his hand desperately clutched his bleeding face. Karen's stomach plummeted. They were both bleeding out now. Like a ghost, the enemy materialized right behind her. The psycho scoffed at his own strike, calling it pure trash, claiming he totally meant to cleave Kakeru's skull open. But his right wrist was already mangled. Kakeru clenched his jaw tight, swallowing a gut-wrenching shriek as his eye blazed. He absolutely refused to collapse. The enemy barked at him to shut up, roaring that he deserved to be screaming, since these rats literally wrecked his ultimate masterpiece. Slowly, he whipped out a tiny glass vial. He sneered, calling them absolute utter trash. He demanded they bow down in gratitude that his mind was still sane during this totally unforgivable mess. With a twisted grin, he popped the lid and chugged the entire vial down fast. The second that liquid hit his throat, his pupils flared blood red. Wild aura exploded. His patience was completely dead. His mangled fingers snapped perfectly back into place like absolute magic. Smirking, he swore he would butcher them alive right then, scatter their pieces, and stomp them into dust. Bleeding heavily, Soda desperately racked his brain. This dude was completely unhinged. He needed to rise. He had to back up his captain. Before Sota could flinch, Sukaku blocked him, denying backup. Sota froze in pure confusion. Sugiko whispered he understood that monster flawlessly, simply because he literally was him for years. He had been hunting for a graveyard ever since letting Kichiro perish. Sota gasped. Then, the brutal truth finally dropped. He was the true reason Kichiro, Sota's own dad, perished. The dead silence suddenly transformed into suffocating pressure. Piercing Sota with a dead stare, he silently dropped the ultimate question. Do you honestly still want to save Mommy, Keikaru? Alright, that wraps up today's epic lore. Craving those weekly chapter drops for this absolute banger? Catch them on my second channel, Manhwa Updater. If you seriously do not want to miss the next crazy plot twist, go subscribe and join our squad. Thanks for hanging out, stay chill, stay legendary, and I will catch